Hello, so welcome to another episode of the Indie Spotlight. And today we are absolutely thrilled to introduce you to Mildra the Monk. I'm sure many of you know him. And today we're going to be digging deep into Final Fantasy Legends Edition, and we're really excited about it. So, Mildra, welcome to the Indie Spotlight.
Thank you both for having me. I enjoy being had.
Oh, Smith, I love your new avatar. It's lovely.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think the time that I had you on in the past, I was still using the old setup. I've made a few upgrades, and there's a few more coming, including this nice little background you see behind me.
It looks really nice. It's absolutely stunning. Now, Final Fantasy Legends Edition. I'm going to start off with one very simple question. What inspired you to create this game? Why is it that you went, you know what, that's the game I want to create?
So, for several years, I ran a podcast that was topic-based called Geek Watch. It's an evolution of a news-based podcast I did when I felt I was getting a little bit too repetitive. This was during the height of the pandemic, and I felt like a lot of these stories I was going over when it came to news were way too repetitive, and the fun stories, although fun is a bit of an air quotes there, because what I considered fun was going over Florida Man stories.
Yeah. I mean, it was a hard time, wasn't it?
Yeah, and when it feels kind of repetitive, I feel like I wasn't able to bring the same energy that I usually do. So I ended up shifting over to a topic-based podcast just about talking about geek shit, which is just what Geek Watch was going to be. And one day in May, about almost 5 years ago, I experimented with the idea of taking the track system from Legend System, which is where the Legend Edition name comes from with the product, and applying Final Fantasy jobs to it. I did that. I had to split it in two because of a power out, and I didn't get power back until the next day. So I had to do an overtime special, and eventually the idea that I had put forward with that stuck in my head, and it wouldn't leave. So I started writing, and then I started writing some more, and then I started writing some more, and I just didn't stop. I was doing these weekly brainstorming/writing sessions with my co-writers Xanatrix for months on end, in addition to doing all the research that we were doing, as well as looking at what had come before and how we were going to tackle that. And the idea of looking at what came before was largely inspired by another project I had covered almost 11 years ago called Heroes Against Darkness, which is another free RPG. The blog of the guy who made it put up a post detailing things that he was taking from each edition of D&D, going all the way back to basic.
Yeah.
And would have these bullet points of, okay, these are things that I'm taking from D&D into my project. And I tried to apply a similar kind of energy. And eventually, it's like the snowball on a hill. Once it starts rolling, it doesn't stop, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, we understand that one.
Yeah. Though from what I hear, there's not enough snow in parts of the UK to get away with that. Unlike here, where I'm covered in snow constantly.
We're lucky if we get that. I mean, it is, and that will cause complete meltdown of the system. So I expect you've got a little bit more than us.
Well, it's -5 below right now, Fahrenheit.
No,
I would convert that to
cold.
Celsius, but at that level of cold, does it really matter? It's still stay the hell inside weather.
Yeah.
Which is why I understand why some people look at people from where I am a little bit crazy, because over in Chicago, there are people setting up for a Bears game at Soldier Field. Soldier Field is an outdoor stadium. It is 1 degree out over there.
Why would you go to a stadium at 1 degree? Sorry.
Because you like the sport.
Look, I know how crazy footballers get in the UK and in Europe, so
yeah,
nobody's throwing stones in that glass house, is what I'm saying.
But absolutely true. But even still, way too cold for me.
Yeah. People in the Midwest for those kind of games will bundle up. There was an outdoor hockey game a few years ago at Target Field where I live, and it was actually so cold that they had to heat up the ice so that people could actually skate on it.
That is cold. That is really cold.
They had a heat plate under the ice.
You know something, you could be sort of veering towards actually looking at a really sort of cold setting for a game. So if we're thinking about your Final Fantasy Legends, why Final Fantasy? What was it that attracted you to Final Fantasy?
So I've been a fan of the series since I started with. At the time, it was 3. What we now notice as 6. I have a bit of a rocky relationship with the fan base of 6, but that's another matter entirely. And it was that and Shin Megami Tensei were 2 games that propelled me into looking into mythology more and more, and looking into the connectedness of different mythologies and different cultures. You know, like how you have the concept of the Ouroboros in like 5 or 6 different cultures at the same time, so that nobody can really say where the chicken came first.
Yeah.
And that goes into how all of these summons have some sort of mythological reference. Several of the monsters do a lot of names of various characters and items have that, whether it be referencing mythology or popular culture, which is its own mythology, as Professor Geek has stated. And there's also the fact that, unlike other console-style RPGs, I've mentioned in the past I don't like the term JRPG, so I don't use it.
Yeah.
Have Final Fantasy has had an interesting lineage of events with different projects by different fans, going all the way back to the Returners project in the mid-90s. Then a bunch of the people involved with it split off and made their own games. Then a second generation of designers who were inspired by the original Returners project but wanted to do their own thing with it came up. This is where you get guys like Bruno over in Brazil or Omega over in Germany. And that's not getting into the myriad attempts to bring FF into other established systems. I've seen ones for Savage Worlds. I've seen ones for D6, as in the D6 system by West End Games. I've seen, obviously, there's been D&D attempts over the years, and even Shadow of the Demon Lord and the Age system have had their own attempts by fans. And what I never set out to try and make the best version of Final Fantasy in role-playing form. That was impossible. But I wanted to make one that was very much in my style, that represented my approach. Because within this whole old school, new school debate, I'm right in the middle, where I'm in neither camp. I'm too focused on seeking new horizons to be old school, and I'm not just burying the past, so I can't consider myself new school. I'm just me.
Yeah, I can completely get that.
Mm-hmm. That, and when it comes to the idea of old school or new school as an identity, I've always taken the approach of the "Who are you?" question from the Inquisitor in Comes the Inquisitor in Babylon 5.
Yeah.
Which that question is kind of like a Zen koan. If you give him a direct answer, he rejects it because that's not what he's asking, or that's not what he's trying to assess from you. Because I'm not sure if either of you had seen that episode, and spoilers for an episode that's over 20 years old. I think the statute's passed by that point.
So Dean quite frequently goes on to Sci-Fi Snob's channel, and where they're going through the different episodes of Babylon 5, because Dean is an absolute Babylon 5 freak.
Oh, I love it.
In fact, we dated watching Babylon 5. And
I introduced Vicky to Babylon 5, and we watched it on a small TV. It was magical.
TV.
So you should be well familiar with Comes the Inquisitor.
Yes,
we're definitely familiar with the Inquisitor. In fact, I think we had the Babylon 5 VHSs for our wedding presents of people.
Yeah.
There you go.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention that there have been a couple of attempts to bring Babylon 5 to TTRPG form.
I had one of them, and it was not good.
There was the D20 project, which was an early Mongoose thing. There was Call to Arms, which is more of a war game, and there was the Babylon project, which is the one of the three that I actually prefer.
It's still not good though. But we want to hear all about your game.
Yes.
I know what I'm like for going off track, and I know what Dean's like for going off track, and you're exactly the same. So I'm here to keep us on track. So we're all about your game, because you've poured so much time and effort into your game. We really want to get into it.
Oh yeah.
So we've been talking about what inspired you from Final Fantasy to create the game. I'm going to ask you, what sort of challenges did you have trying to translate that sort of, I mean, from what I've seen of the Final Fantasy games, Dean's played them a lot. I used to watch them more than play them. And from what I've seen of them, they're actually quite complicated and very in-depth. You've mentioned about translating some of those creatures across. What were your biggest challenges in sort of taking that Final Fantasy concept and turning it into a game you wanted to play?
Well, before we even got to that point, Zan and I had discussed the pillars that we were building around.
Okay.
A lot of fan projects and some official projects, not just regarding Final Fantasy, but just in general, tend to get lost in the weeds about what sort of core mechanic they're going to use, or how they're going to do this sort of system or that sort of system. And I've had to grab people's shoulders and shake them, saying, "You're not at that point. You haven't even established a foundation. Sit the hell down."
Yeah.
A few times I've had to go full Malcolm Tucker with somebody, if you don't mind me making that reference.
Not at all.
Or worse, Jamie, aka the crossest man in Scotland. But the pillars were a all roads lead to Rome for us. These were a set of things that everything we do, whether it be mechanics, whether it be fluff, whatever, has to fit these pillars. And that's where we started coining terms like mythos, not setting, customization is king, and all that. The idea we had, instead of drawing upon one entry or one set of entries like my predecessors had, it was to use the recurring mythos as a sandbox. And the thing that was tricky was figuring out what to keep and what not. Because we knew from the get-go we weren't going to try and slavishly adapt. That's another common pitfall I've seen. Instead, what we were trying to do is get the spirit of it down. And we ended up researching in areas that I think some of my colleagues wouldn't be willing to. That includes going through Internet Archive to find old articles and interviews. That's where we found out about some of the stories with Hiroyuki Ito, who was the guy behind the battle system He's the guy behind ATB and 4. He was the guy who created the job system, and I consider him one of the unsung heroes when it comes to making Final Fantasy what it is. And studying that sort of thing, studying cut content, studying some concept art, whether it was used or unused, since any game development project is going to have a thick cutting room floor.
Yeah.
Of just things that they either were considering using at one point but didn't fit as things developed, or there were technical problems. Things can get cut for any number of reasons. It was through that I learned, for example, that Final Fantasy IX at one point was actually going to have the job system.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting on that one.
There's concept art of different races having different jobs. That didn't come to pass, and as far as why, like I said, there's any potential number of reasons why that didn't happen. In the same vein, what was Materia was originally going to be called Spheres. But that was shot down by Sakaguchi because he wanted a name that kids would be repeating at the playgrounds. So the Spheres name was shelved and then got reused when 10 came along. So those sorts of studying things, and what we came to a realization about is the core of FF, despite what a lot of people think it is, isn't. The core, once you strip past all the layers, is iteration and experimentation. It is for that reason that I find that whenever somebody wants more quote unquote traditional aspects of Final Fantasy in the present or future, they are really saying that they want something like what they grew up with, but they're not honest enough to say that. When 16 came along, there was the whole issue of it should have been turn-based, and I think when a lot of people are saying that, what they're really saying is, I want something like the games I grew up with.
Yeah. Even
though making it turn-based just wouldn't fit the story that they were telling. Plus, if you hire one of the combat designers for Devil May Cry 5, why would you have him do turn-based? It's like hiring a sushi chef and asking him to make a cheeseburger.
So you mentioned your pillars. Can I be nosy? What were your pillars?
The first one I already mentioned is mythos, not setting.
Mythos. Yeah.
That is, we are drawing upon the recurring mythology that the franchise has built up over the last few decades, instead of building around one specific entry.
Yeah.
Because a problem that I had with my predecessors is a lot of them skewed towards the SNES era. Now, I like 4, 5, and 6, don't get me wrong, but there's a whole generation who has more of an attachment to the PS1 era, or the PS2 era, or the PS3 era. And telling those people just house rule it, I don't think is satisfactory.
No, I'd agree with you.
You're pretty much picking them up, throwing them off the high dive, and saying, swim, damn it.
Yeah, with little, not even armbands on.
Mm-hmm. I never wore armbands when I swam.
Didn't you? Oh, you missed out on the joy of having great big inflatable things stuck to your arms that then actually prevented you from swimming.
No, I never had that. I had a vest and I only had that for about 6 months before I took it off. But I wanted a neutral sandbox. The blue bucket of Legos is the analogy I often use.
Yeah.
To say, I'm not building you. I'm building you the tools to make a world. I'm not building you a world itself. So take the tools, make the world that you want to make. Because once it's out of my hands, I have no say on it. I'm not that table's parent. Hell, I wanted it so that if somebody wanted to do a Three Kingdoms inspired take on Final Fantasy, or a World War I take on Final Fantasy, or more Weird War I, they would have the tools to do that.
But I think that's really nice, because we've heard it a lot where people have talked about, well, can I run it in my world? A lot of people spend a lot of time creating their worlds, and they want to take your system and run it with their world. So I think that mythos not setting is actually that's really nice. I think people would really like that.
Yeah. So the second pillar, customization is king. This was
Like
the
that
fact
one.
that on the player side and on the GM side, there is a heavy emphasis on customization. There is not really a Babby's first character kind of setup for.
Okay.
There isn't any equivalent to the basic fighter. I know we have fighter as a job, but if you've seen fighter in that, or even just the way we have jobs, none of them are the basic archetype of I just do this one thing and then that's it for for my entire adventuring career. And we have gotten asked, what if somebody wants to do that basic attack and nothing else kind of character? And I had said, well, for one, if you want to do that, why are you playing a Final Fantasy TTRPG? And
question.
And two, you don't actually want that. You may say that you do, but you really don't. Because I've been in those conversations where the basic fighter is bored to death. So I'm not letting that one fly. But on the GM side, we made a monster creation system before we made any monsters. All of the monsters that are in the enemy intel field guide and in the core book are essentially pre-gens. It is 200 pre-gens made with that setup. That's
a really good number for starting out. That's really impressive.
Yeah. But the key thing was making the creation system before we made any monsters so that there was a formula that people could build around to make their own.
I think that's really sound, and a similar approach to the one I've taken. You need a foundation to make sure everything makes sense.
Not only that, but no matter how many monsters you put in a monster manual or a bestiary or whatnot, it's never going to cover everything.
No.
And trying to have it cover everything is going to be a Sisyphean task. So customization on the player and GM side, and even something as simple as weapons. I don't have a equipment list in the traditional sense. I have a bunch of pre-gens and a bunch of samples that is built on a tag system, because I knew at some point some IP is going to come along with a weapon that has the same cool factor as when people first saw the Buster Sword in 1997. And being aware of that, even if I don't know what form that hypothetical is going to take, there is at least a foundation that someone can build that in my system.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. And the third pillar is the act structure that we built around. When I've looked at console-style RPGs, and to try and better define it, because the definition I hear when it comes to the term JRPG has never been satisfactory, because anytime I hear a certain definition, there's always some hole in it. And I find that if you're going to define something, it should be as consistent as possible. Like this is the vicious cycle I often see when I hear people try to define JRPG to me. An RPG made in Japan. Well, if that's the case, does that mean that the Souls games are JRPGs? And they'll say no. It has to have a manga-esque art style. Well, Battle Chasers certainly has that. Joe Mad is very manga inspired.
Code Vein,
Code
Vein, which is another Souls-like but very manga inspired.
Yeah. Or I often use Subterra Core because that was made in 2000, and when I bring up that, they go, no, Subterra Core was made in Canada. It has to be made in Japan. And you see where the vicious circle goes.
Yeah, you just end up going round, don't you, all the time with stuff that looks like or has taken the culture and sort of developed it, but isn't necessarily made in Japan. And then just doesn't work, does it?
If the place of origin is going to be used as a argument, I had said, all right, fine. You want to go that route? Let's go that route. If that's the case, nobody who isn't French should call their film a noir film, or noir fiction.
Yeah,
nobody's going to make that argument unironically. So I don't have. So that's the point. The point is that the thing that this is where the whole act structure comes in. When I looked at the development process that led to the original Dragon Quest, which is the patient zero for this, I saw a pattern: town, field, dungeon, repeat. You go into town to get supplies. You get some practice swings out in the field. You put that to the test in a dungeon with a boss. Then you're rewarded with more of the story as you go to the next town, get better equipment, so on and so forth. That, in addition to a 4X structure that is seen across Asia called Kisho Tenketsu, which I did reference in the Ultimania guide, led to me creating a 4-act structure: preparation, exploration, encounter, downtime. I will admit a bit of inspiration from the act structure that you see in some of the World of Darkness games, but especially in the modules for Legend of the Five Rings, which have a 3-act structure of setup, focus, and strike. Once again, the idea is providing a structure for people to build around instead of just assuming that people know how they're going to set up their adventure. Now, of course, you don't have to use the 4-act structure, but it's there as a guideline. And I had felt that creating that kind of structure, which the downtime part is important for the loop of the game, was key to not only giving a feel that would be similar to the games, but also giving a way for people to do one-shot or long-form adventures without having to rely on the traditional dungeon. Because I have gotten people saying, how would one run a dungeon in the system? And I basically said, it is not designed with the assumption you're running a dungeon. I never had that intent, because a dungeon is a very specific thing, and I wasn't trying to go for that kind of specificity.
So when you say you weren't looking specifically for dungeons, you're talking more sort of open worlds then?
How open or closed the world is a table decision. All that I'm doing is providing the tools.
Yeah, so this comes back to the first thing, which is your mythos, not setting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, the table already has some kind of setting idea in mind. All that I'm doing is giving them the tools to transfer it into something more tangible.
So if they wanted to take a very story-driven approach where it's pretty much a kind of one route through with potentially side bits, that's absolutely fine. They can use rules for that. If they want something that's more spiderwebby or open world, that they can do it for that as well.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, so we've discussed the 3 pillars.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything more? 4.
Yeah, were there 4? We've covered 3. I thought there were 4.
Were there 4 pillars? No,
just 3.
No, just 3.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Anything you want to? I'm doing the 3 Musketeers, not the 4 pillars of heaven.
Yes, 3 pillars, but there's a 4th. Yeah. Anything else you want to say on the pillars before we move on?
I think that covers it.
Fantastic.
I really
think
like
that's
that.
a great approach. Yeah, I do like it. I'm eager to get into the actual kind of rules around it. When it comes to complexity, where would you put your system from light to very complex? Where is it on that scale?
I had placed it on medium. And I did. Now, I do want to make clear how I approach the spectrum here.
Yeah.
I consider a light complexity game to be something akin to Fate or Powered by the Apocalypse. Those are games I consider on the lighter end of things.
Yeah.
On the heavy end of things, that's where I consider things like Hero System or some of the more simulationist stuff like unfortunately Phoenix Command, which as an aside is on a short list of games I will never run again.
Well, that's really sad. Short list of games you'd never run again. Almost need to look that one up just to see how bad it is.
Yeah.
It was one of those games that came out of the 90s where people were trying to make as simulation-y as possible. This was a bit of a trend back then.
Around the same time, Gary Gygax did Dangerous Journeys, I believe, which was another very simulation-heavy game where you calculated your assets, your disposable income, you had spreadsheets everywhere to control what your character could have had and could do. Yeah.
But another example I'd say when it comes to high complexity would be, say, Rollmaster.
Yeah.
The OG
with all the
Rollmaster.
tables.
Yeah, all of the tables. Not MERP. MERP was actually a simplified version.
Yeah.
You can't see it, but I'm doing massive air quotes about it being
simplified. It was a bit simpler, but it was still a lot of tables. Yeah. I played MERP back in the day. I really enjoyed it, but
I did. I reviewed it a while back, and I said it's nice, but it does have that old habit of a bunch of subsystems instead of a unified whole.
Yeah,
which is something that you start to see as you get further into the 90s. That whole bunch of subsystem things was more of a vestige from wargaming.
Yeah, and you see it a lot in AD&D, both editions, where your dice are changing depending on what you're doing. It's percentile, or it's a D20, D20 high, or D20 low to pass, and it just keeps changing. Yeah,
and I consider Legend Edition to be a medium complexity affair.
Yeah. So
right along the lines of D20 system. Or Savage Worlds, or TriStat DX. Those ones that are in the middle ground as far as their complexity, because once you get to actually doing any complexity with Legend Edition is front loaded. It's largely in the character creation and advancement setup. Once you get to the actual rolling dice and actual play part, the most complicated thing is probably the way I have spells work, and even then, that's not enough to bump it to heavy. Like, it's doing some things that are certainly different, but I wouldn't say it's more complex.
Okay, fantastic. What sort of dice do you need to play?
The core mechanic is a D20 and D6 affair.
Right. Yeah.
Nice.
I've seen some go, why did you go with D20? And then they bring up the bell curve argument. There was a statistician a while back who actually looked at different die mechanics and concluded that none of them have a, quote, statistically significant advantage. And basically saying that a lot of the arguments for one of them being better than the other is really just feel more than anything else. But the reason I went with the D20, aside from a nod to Legend Edition, where this whole Legend system where this all started, is I wanted something straightforward with the core mechanic, because everything else was going to be more complex. And so it is a D20 roll high. I did integrate the Boon and Bane system to a point from Shadow of the Demon Lord, where instead of situational positives or minuses, you have boons and banes, and some abilities will generate them as well.
Yeah.
In those situations, you roll a number of D6s, you keep the highest, and you add or subtract that to the total roll. You can trade boons and banes for an expanded critical or botch threat range, but it's +1 to either for every 2 boons or banes, respectively, that you trade. But it's an all or nothing thing. You trade all of the boons and banes that you generate for that roll for that.
Okay, so this is where the D6 comes in as part of your boons and banes. Does that mean if I've got advantage, so I've had the higher ground, I'm leaping, I'm charging, I can actually stack up a number of boons?
Yeah. Obviously, boons and banes cancel each other out, but no matter what you roll for boons or banes, your bonus that you get from them is going to range from 1 to 6.
Yeah.
Because it's your highest D6, isn't it? It's the highest one.
If you got 2, the average is going to be slightly higher. If you got 3, you're almost guaranteed a 5 or a 6, and so forth. But you can sacrifice some boons for additional benefits elsewhere. Yes,
you can sacrifice them to give yourself an expanded crit range, or sacrifice banes for an expanded botch range.
Okay, and is this done before you roll your D20?
Yes.
So it's a little bit of risk management there, a little bit of do I feel lucky? Yeah.
Yeah, we do. Zen and I, my co-writer and editor-in-chief, and he will insist on being called that, love risk-reward systems. My favorite kinds of risk-reward systems I best describe as a game of chicken.
Yeah.
In the sense that you can back out at any time you want, but if you keep pushing it and you bust, it is on you.
Yeah. Okay, I like what I'm hearing here so far. No other dice used?
Obviously, the range of D4 to D12 dice are used for things like damage and other effects, but the All Roads Lead to Rome core resolution is D20 and D6.
Fantastic. I like it.
I've got a quick question, if I may butt in.
Go on.
So just listening to you talk about that and the fact you've got to announce your D6s first, how does that mean that you say, do you have initiative? And then if you do have initiative, if it's your go, do you have to agree what the boons and banes are, then agree how you're going to sort of divvy that up and then roll? How does that all work together?
So, and some GMs may not do this in the exact order, but this has been my approach. They declare what they're going to do. I say, okay, you might generate. Let's say somebody's trying to sneak past the guard. So I'd be like, all right, you get, because of the fact that you're not wearing heavy armor, I'll give you 1 boon. But because of the fact that it's at night and you don't have much in the way of enhanced vision, I'm giving you 2 banes. So they would roll with 1 bane. At that point, they could declare I'm doing a bane trading, so that my botch range is 1 to 2, but I don't roll a bane instead. But I also don't get, but I still roll that boon. So then he'd roll it. He'd add the boon. If he doesn't get 1 to 2, he doesn't botch. So I compare that with the target number and determine whether or not he passed or not.
I've got a quick question on your botch.
Mm-hmm.
That botch, I'm assuming, only applies to the D20. So It's not the D20 plus the D6 1 to 2 range. It's purely D20 1 to 2.
Yep.
Cool. That's what I expected, but you never know. Have to ask.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I said, I wanted the core mechanic to be straightforward because everything surrounding it was not going to be.
Yeah. I take it you got an attribute or some other modifier that gets added to the D20?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I have 6 core. There are 6 core attributes. Depending, those are going to be used in different ways for different skills, different attacks and whatnot. I do not have it that you roll your 6 ability modifiers, because we had ability scores in an early draft, but we weren't doing anything with them, so I nicked it, and instead it's straight modifiers, kind of like True 20.
Yeah.
The 6 abilities are vigor, agility, vitality, mind, spirit, and persona. Some of them are going to be used for physical or magical combat, depending on your class, and all of them are going to be used in different skills. In fact, we only have 7 skills, and each of them uses the higher of one of 2 abilities.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes.
I wanted to avoid having one ability that is a god stat. One like say dexterity in D&D, which affects so many different things.
Yeah,
it's almost a must to have it.
Okay. That sounds pretty straightforward there. How did the skills work then?
With skills, it is a straight D20 roll.
Yeah.
You are adding the relevant ability, and you're adding your training bonus. Instead of having skill points, we have 3 tiers of training: untrained, trained, and origin. And these are somewhat analogous to how trained skills worked in things like Star Wars Saga Edition or D&D 4th Edition, i.e. the edition I'm supposed to hate, but I don't because the check bounced. The idea is that as you level up, you get a bonus at every few levels, depending on how trained you are in that skill. Untrained has a bonus equal to 1/4 your level. Trained has a bonus of half your level, and Origin has a bonus of your level.
Okay.
Some games penalize rolling untrained. We don't, because we figured having a much lower bonus than trained or Origin is punishment enough. No need to kick somebody while they're down.
I can imagine that. I think that makes absolute sense.
Yeah, this leads into another question, which is, what is the level range of the system?
20.
So 1st to 20. Brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
So you could potentially have a situation where someone has a skill of 5, someone has a skill of 10, someone has a skill of 20, plus obviously their attribute by the maximum level.
Yes.
Is that gap, I mean, you're talking about a 15-point gap, which is almost a D20. Does that cause any problems at that level?
Not really, because it does mean, for starters, there's the fact that with rare exception, you're only going to have one skill as your origin skill. You're going to have a few that are trained, but getting new trained skills is not all that easy. So it does require a particular dedication to bump something up from untrained to trained or from trained to origin. Now, people who pick the expert class will have an easier time with it, but it also means that they're neglecting other aspects if they choose to focus that much on their skills.
Yeah.
Especially since none of the skills are tied to combat.
So anything that you're using for combat is not classed as a skill then?
Yeah, combat uses its own setup.
Okay, that's really interesting. So all the skills are typically against probably a difficulty class. Do you use DCs?
Yeah, I call it TN, but it is basically a number you've got to beat.
Yeah, target numbers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What's the sort of range on target numbers then?
Anywhere from 10 to 30, depending on what the difficulty is. If
30 being pretty much almost impossible, but still doable. Someone with an origin skill at maximum level would have a good chance of probably hitting the 30. Anybody else would be struggling, as it should be. And anybody untrained will probably, unless they get a critical success, wouldn't get that 30.
Pretty much. And of course there are going to be there are going to be exceptions as there is with everything that follows the philosophy of exception-based gameplay, which includes myself.
Okay, I quite like that approach. As you say, it's straightforward. It works. It's something that people are used to. You're not adding complexity. You're not reinventing a wheel. That, in my opinion, probably doesn't need to be reinvented, because you want to have your players decide what they want to do and then resolve whether they could do it fairly quickly. And this sounds fantastic. This sounds really good. Could you just list the 7 skills out of curiosity?
So the 7 skills, which I'm actually glad we have that number. I didn't plan on it being 7. It just kind of happened, especially since I didn't want to fall into the trap of some games that have skills way too specific.
Yeah.
One of my whipping boys is say Palladium, which is very anal retentive with its individual skills, or some of the skills in 3rd edition that make me ask the question, why are these separate? Like, why is run, climb, jump, and swim separate skills? Why is use rope its own skill?
Yeah.
When nobody who's actually doing any athletic training is going to be training those things in that level of isolation. Like, it didn't make sense for somebody who's a really good swimmer to not be able to run well.
No. You've got some good natural groupings. You played an early version of Untold Destiny where I think we had about 40 odd skills, and that got brought down to 25. Sorry, my camera's got a zoom, and whenever I do hand gestures,
are you upsetting your camera, dear?
I am. It's having a flit here.
You need to pray to the machine spirit.
I do. But I'm eager to understand 7 skills. That feels like a small number.
It is. I wanted it to be as compact as possible, because I wanted individual skills that had a lot of versatility, as opposed to a bunch of single-use skills.
Yeah.
I like that approach.
So that these skills could get used as frequently as possible. But the skills we have are acrobatics, which uses either vigor or agility.
Nice.
Athletics, which one is aerobic, one is anaerobic. That's the best way to describe it. Larceny, which can include a lot of what would be considered thief skills. So, stealing people's stuff, breaking and entering, disabling stuff, being slippery, and pulling the 3-card Monty. Misdirection, which is where you get your things like hiding, lying to somebody, disguising yourself as somebody else, impersonation, all that kind of stuff.
Nice.
Orienteering, which is where things like searching or looking for hazards or tracking somebody. We have a whole sidebar about the fact that we do not have a spot check. That was something I was very insistent on, because I didn't want somebody rolling orienteering every few feet that they step.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess annoying.
Agree. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're using I don't think you should have to roll a check just to look at something. No. Instead, I think something like this should be used if somebody says, I'm going to search the area and use orienteering for that, I will immediately say, what exactly are you looking for?
Yeah.
Then you have ride, which is exactly what you think it is. Presence, which is where a lot of the social skills are put in other games are put in. So your diplomacy, your intimidation, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Would your persuasion come under that as well? So
yes.
Excellent. So that's all those sort of very sort of social items that aren't used for deception.
Yeah.
Cool.
And there is a special category when it comes to knowledge. Knowledge isn't one of these 7 skills. It's its own It is technically a skill roll, but it doesn't work the same way. Knowledge is essentially a stat that is equal to half your level, the higher of your mind or spirit modifier, and the number of interests you have. Interests are a kind of tag that would be the equivalent of a knowledge subject in other games. These can come in three forms. Affiliation, so a character's allegiances. Originally, this was called alignment, but we changed it to affiliation because I didn't want people to assume the 9 alignment grid.
Yeah.
Languages, which is self-explanatory, and it could account for racial languages or even local dialects if you want to take that route. And studies, which are fields of interest. Because knowledge skills is one of those things that really contributes to skill bloat in some games, where every single subject is its own skill. And much like what I said with the swimmer analogy, somebody who's particularly learned isn't going to, if they're studying, isn't going to be studying one particular thing in isolation like that. It's someone who's studying, say how to repair boats, is probably also going to know things like flag code and naval procedure just as well, even if it's civilian ships, as well as the knowledge of what materials to use and not use, that sort of thing. And when instead of having those as separate things, if you have an interest that ties to whatever you're rolling knowledge for, you gain a boon to that roll.
Nice.
All right.
Stop.
Okay. Yeah. So it's kind of a two-tier approach here, where you've got a general. I've got a character that has a lot of these niche sort of areas that they have expertise in. They've got a lot of languages, so they've gone down a very cerebral route. So my general knowledge is going to be quite high, but I will get a boon then on any areas that I have kind of specialized in to push that level of knowledge that bit further and to represent that specialism.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think that's a very interesting approach. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when we were going just through that, you mentioned about sort of your racial languages, and that's one of the questions I didn't actually get to ask, which was, have you got one race, or if you've got multiple races? You know, how many races do you have, or do you class that under settings?
We do have a handful of races in the core book, and a lot more in the Ultimania guide. Each of the races provide. There's a template about what they provide. It's usually +1 to 1 ability. There'll usually, with a couple exceptions, there will be a pair of abilities. You have to pick one of them. You treat one skill that's listed as an origin skill, and you get 1 feat from one of 3 categories that you pick. For example, the Banga, they can get 1 feat from either the Fortune category, Melee Combat category, or Subterfuge category. And they treat Presence as an origin skill, as well as be able to get a +1 to either Vitality or Spirit. Each race also has a racial feature that provides either a passive or an active effect, depending on the race. Some of them will have an optional feature that doesn't have as much mechanical input or has negative input. That is a player choice if they want to take that. For example, Android has artificial being as a racial feature, as an optional one, which just means that they can't recover HP using white magic.
I am racking my brains right now to think about which Final Fantasy had an android.
There's been plenty of entries that had robot entries, and we were taking from FF adjacent games as well as the core entries. But there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14 different races in the core book.
Wow.
And over 20 races in one of the sections in the Ultimania guide called Mason's Tales of Genealogy.
So you're providing someone the tools to populate their world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The core races that I have are Aura, which are the dragon humanoids that appeared in 14. Androids, as I mentioned before, which is our catch-all for android or robot or whatnot.
Yeah, I think Fantasy Star when I think androids.
Yeah, you're probably thinking of the castes.
Yeah.
I loved fun.
Yeah.
I loved that. It was just brilliant.
But Banga, who first appeared in Tactics Advance, the salamander-like folk.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Do not call them lizards unless you want to get kicked in the face.
Yes.
Burmesian, who are the rat folk that you saw in 9.
Yeah.
Dwarves, although when I had my artist do it, I was insistent on not giving me D&D style or Lord of the Rings style dwarves.
Yeah.
Elzen, which is the name equivalent of elf. You first saw the name Elzen in FF11. Hume, which has always been the name for human. Mithra, the catfolk that you've seen in 11 and 14. Mughals need no introduction.
Yep. So you can play a Moogle.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Can I play a chocobo?
No. You can be a chocobo knight, though.
Ooh.
We'll probably get to that when we talk about jobs. But
Yeah.
Rogadan, who are the giants who showed up in 14. Ronso, who were the Rakshasa-inspired folk who appeared in 10. Tarutaru, who are the acorn-like small folk who first appeared in 11. Varg, which is a nod to the werewolves from 5. And Viera, the rabbit folk who first appeared in Tactics Advance and later on in other Evilise projects.
Yeah. Okay, it sounds like you've got a great number of races, really drawing upon, as you say, your first pillar, the mythos of Final Fantasy. I always wondered how you were going to bring so many disparate systems and worlds together, and I think this is a fantastic approach.
Yep.
Sounds absolutely great. I'm just going to recommend that we take five minutes for everyone to have a quick comfort break, because I'm old. And then basically, so if about 5 past the hour we come back, would that be okay with everybody? Because we've got lots more to cover.
Yeah. A lot more questions on this side. I'm really enjoying this, by the way, Mildra. I'm loving this deep dive, and I hope you're okay with the questions.
Oh yeah, I'm good.
Good, excellent.
So, you don't mind just having? So we'll come back at 5 past.
Yeah,
and we will continue. We'll cut this little bit out. So
I'll edit this out. So it's one thing, but
it's the other reason we record it, isn't it? So I can have my comfort breaks.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. See you in 5.
I'll see you in 5.
Yep.
Right, just to let you know, I am back. Eddie, I think you're on mute. No, I think you're still on mute.
Mm-hmm.
I am.
There we go.
There we go. Too many buttons.
Okay, just making notes of the time, and then Honey, you can kick it off if you want. Part 2.
Part 2. What am I doing? We started talking about races. So we've just finished off talking about races. So now let's go and sort of delve into what character classes they can go. So they've chosen their race, but they can't be a chocobo. And what sort of classes are available to them?
So here's where things get a little bit interesting. Because technically speaking, I only have 4 classes.
Okay.
Now, the emphasis here is technically.
You've got all your jobs, haven't you? Because you've mentioned jobs, so I reckon there'll be a link there.
Yes. A class is just the chassis that determines how they develop HP, MP, how many skills they have trained, as well as the ability modifier that's going to be used for physical and magical combat. This is referred to as the PCM and MCM. This stat is also going to be used to determine your base defenses as well as the total modifier you use for attacks, whether you're doing physical or magical attacks. Now, those 4 classes are Warrior, Expert, Mage, and Adept. Warrior is all about physical combat. Expert is skill use. Magical combat is, Mage. And a mix is Adept. So you could kind of think of them as 3 points of a golden triangle with Adept right in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean that this is the golden triangle of tank, DPS, and healer? No. It is more of physical, skill, magic. So you could kind of think of like the whole might, will, and skill trinity in the better Fable games. So the first one. The one that actually followed through on Peter Molyneux's promises.
Yeah.
But like I said, it only provides a chassis. It doesn't provide any real features aside from limit break, which is another matter entirely.
Oh, I want to really get into how limit break works, because I always used to get excited when I used to watch Dean playing Final Fantasy as a limit break went up. Mm-hmm. So I want you to go through that in depth.
So where you get your actual features is through your jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Each of the classes has about 11 jobs that are associated with them, and there are 11 more that are independent, i.e. not associated with any class. You can pick any 3 that you want. The only rule is at least one of them has to be associated with your class. So if you pick Warrior as your class, you have to pick one of the Warrior associated jobs. Mm-hmm. You develop each of those jobs has a set of 7 tiers of features called circles. And when you get those circles depends on whether or not you assign that job fast, medium, or slow progression. This is on a 3-level stagger. The approach is, and this is why the levels are capped at 20. You gain your first circle job. You gain your circle of features from your fast and medium job at first level. you get your first circle features from your slow job at second level. Every level after that, it's alternating fast, medium, and slow for second circle, then for third circle, all the way up to seventh. So because of that, there's a crazy amount of combinations. It also meant that some traditional jobs had to be reinterpreted or reworked. There are a few jobs that are in there that aren't in any of the games, but I added in because I wanted to fill certain gameplay niches. And because of that, this is part of the reason I said making a basic attack fighter is all but impossible in this system.
Yeah. Because your job system makes it so that you haven't just got your base fighter, you've got all of the other things around it. I really like that.
Yeah. Multi-classing in a lot of RPGs that have class systems is something of a side thought, something that isn't all that integrated because it wasn't in there to begin with. Through the combination of jobs, what would be multi-classing in other games is almost mandatory here. Now, is there a way to emulate the basic fighter equivalent? Yes, but even then, it's not going to be doing basic attack and nothing else. And that customization also applies to progression of magic item slots. It's not on a body part slot. It's on 4 tiers of magic item. And a similar thing with consumables. You can have all the magic items and consumables you want in storage, but you can only carry so many that you have in equipment slots. As you level up, you get more slots, obviously, and a similar thing applies to the spells that you can equip and bring with you on adventures.
Okay, does your spell slots, the number of spells you can take, are they tied back to the jobs? So if you go a lot of very strong magic jobs, can you actually bring a lot more spells with you?
It is tied to your MCM.
Right, and that's tied to your class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you pick mage, you get a additional slot every other level. Everyone else gets an additional slot every 4 levels.
Okay.
Does your race have any sort of influence into anything, any sort of jobs or classes? So the race is sort of more aligned to certain ones than others, or is it just completely your race is completely separate from that and doesn't influence it at all?
No, that was a conscious choice to not do that because I didn't want a false choice problem.
Mm-hmm.
To illustrate what I mean, in Final Fantasy XI, the warrior can equip any weapon, but practically speaking, all roads lead to the Great Axe because it provides the most benefits for your kit.
Yeah.
That is kind of what I mean by the false choice problem. Technically speaking, you don't have to equip a Great Axe as a warrior in FF11, but you're going to do it.
Yeah, you're going to do it because it's the best weapon in the game.
It's the best weapon for the warrior kit.
Mm-hmm.
And especially at higher levels, you're going to be most of the high level weapons that you're going to be able to equip are going to be Great Axes. So you have the choice, but you really don't.
You have the perception of choice.
Yeah, that kind of thing was something I wanted to avoid. I didn't want. Now, are there certain races that are going to lean more into, say, casting? Yeah, but they're not going to get but the advantage that they have on that is not so overwhelming that it cuts everything else off. For example, the Tarutaru, who always have a history of being adept with magic, their racial feature is Arcane Mastery. And it just means that when you're casting spells that aren't innate, you can apply 1 meta magic feat for free.
Okay.
Now,
yeah.
that is as close as it goes to that kind of skewing.
But that's really interesting because it still supports the fact that as a race they tend to lean towards spellcasting, but it's not such a massive bonus that they always go spellcasting.
Yeah, I'm not doing any sort of you get extra experience if you are in these classes. That was the kind of thing I wanted to avoid.
Yeah. So by 20th level, you will have reached the 7th circle in all 3 of your classes, right?
Yes.
Okay, and there's 11 classes per, 11 jobs per class. These are jobs, and then 11 jobs that are that can be taken by any class.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a lot of choice there when you start to work out all the different number of combinations, really.
Permutations are quite a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't do the full calculation, but we'd assessed that there are about around 20,000 potential combinations of jobs.
I can believe that, yeah. And your jobs, they don't give you bonuses to combat because that comes from your class, but they give you the abilities that you can use in combat. Yeah. And is there a mix between your physical-based, weapon-based abilities and spellcasting? Or is it kind of like you can have a warrior that has actually got access to a little bit of magic in the way of spells?
Yeah, there are multiple ways to gish. I'm pretty sure I think I explained the term gish to you in the past. For those who aren't familiar, gish is a term referring to characters who are decent at fighting and casting. Comes from a mutation of the Gith Zerai and Gith Yankee when Fiend Folio first came out.
Yeah.
And there's multiple ways to go about it. You can utilize scrolls, which do not fit, which are a temporary spell use that you lose out on at the end of the adventure. Basically, once you hit downtime, you lose out on that spell.
And it takes a consumable spot or magic item slot.
It takes spell scrolls take up a spell slot.
Ah, right. Okay, interesting.
You have to acquire them the way you'd acquire consumables, but they don't take up a consumable slot. No. On the other hand, there are magic equivalent items that, much like the items that you'd see in some FFs that are described as having the same effect as a spell. So that is an option. Those do take a consumable slot. And there's nothing stopping someone from taking fighter, for example, and then taking one of the mage jobs as well.
Yeah.
Like if you pick warrior, there's nothing stating that all of your jobs have to be warrior. Just one of them has to. And it doesn't even have to be your first one.
Yeah. But if you did that, you would have a very low magic attack because you're the warrior class, which favors physical prowess over magic.
Yeah, your MCM would be mind, so if your mind is still high, you'd still have a high magic attack.
Yeah.
If you pick warrior.
But as you gain the levels, you'd start to drift behind because it wouldn't scale as well.
Yeah, it wouldn't scale as well, but it's not like you'd be completely useless at it. And there are ways to alleviate that issue through magic items and other means. So
did I hear you correctly earlier? Did you mention features or feats?
Feats. I've got a note to talk about those. Yeah.
Well, I got there first.
Go on. Take us into feats because I'm intrigued with this.
Yeah. Now, obviously having feats is nothing new. But a design philosophy I wanted to have with feats is that these are little tricks that don't fit any one job. Instead, one of the things that I wanted to minimize is feats that are just direct stat boosts. We wanted characters to grow in both width and height.
Yeah.
Now, Every character starts with 3 feats total. One of those feats is going to be from your race, and 2 of them are going to be freebies. You're at every odd numbered level after first, so at 3rd, at 5th, at 7th, and so on, you get an additional feat slot.
Okay.
It is also possible to gain feat slots through magic items if you have the proper enchantment.
Nice.
And when it comes to prerequisites of feats, the only time feats have prerequisites is if it's a 3-feat chain, and those are always noted with a Roman numeral.
So 1, 2, 3, so you know that you're going to end up going down a chain.
Yes, that is the only time there's prerequisites. There are some subcategories of feats that have their own specific rules, like ambush feats are combat abilities that only work if you're targeting somebody who's lower on the initiative poll than you.
Mm-hmm.
Or metamagic feats, which are a subtype of spell casting, where you can apply them to spells, but each time you do, the difficulty to cast it goes up by 1 rank. And ninth rank is the highest it goes. It's the highest it goes for spellcasting, period.
Okay, is that a permanent increase in the difficulty only when you're applying that metamagic?
Yes. There's no upper limit on how many metamagic feats you can apply if you've got them.
Right.
It's just that each one is going to bring it up is going to bring up the relevant TN to cast up by 1 rank.
Okay. We're going to be moving on to spells because I got a big question around that. In fact, I'll ask it now. Are your spells done via ranks? So you've only got access to the lower powered spells, but as you gain levels, you get access to more powerful versions or more powerful spells?
Yeah, every spell has a range of ranks that they can be cast at.
Right.
Some of them start at 1st, some of them start at 9th.
Okay.
The range of the highest rank that you can cast is based on the highest circle that you've unlocked in that casting list. 8th and 9th rank spells you can only get through grimoires.
Got it. Okay.
Nice.
So these will be sought after. You'd almost do a quest to try and find one.
Yeah. And there are certain spells that only have a minimum rank of 8 or 9, and those are considered high magic. And unless you have a grimoire, you're not using those.
Yeah.
Like, at all.
Okay.
The spells that you have as grimoires are exempt from the spell slot rule.
Wow. Okay.
Makes them really powerful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I've got a 7th rank spell. It can only be cast at 7th rank. That means I could apply 2 metamagics to it.
Yes.
I've got a grimoire that is an 8th level spell or an 8th rank spell. Does that mean I can still apply a metamagic, but only the 1?
Yes.
And then a 9th, forget it. You're not applying any metamagics. It's powerful enough.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds quite straightforward. And the metamagics, can you give me some examples of the kind of uses of metamagics to what do they do to the spells?
There's a wide variety of what they can do, but I can give a few examples. Again, as soon as it loads. But for example, bouncing spell, which has it that when the spell misses its attack, you can re-roll that attack with another opponent as the target. You can only do this with single target spells.
Yeah.
Nice.
Or extended spell. If the spell inflicts a condition, the condition ignores the first attempt at removing it.
Ah.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
So if you cast bio and successfully inflict poison and somebody tries to use Poisona, it ignores the first attempt at Poisona to get rid of it.
Yeah.
It's almost like it embeds that much longer and it takes that much more to shake off.
Yeah. Or maximize spell. If you're casting a spell that deals damage or recovers HP, the die for using that are treated as their maximum result. Extra effort dice are exempt from that. That in spellcasting, that'd be the rule of 3. I'll get to extra effort later on. But the idea is that even if you have like a first rank spell and you apply 1 meta magic, the TN to cast it is treated as rank 2.
Yeah. And what are the sort of target numbers that you're talking about?
It starts at 3 and goes up by 3 for each rank after that. So
up to 27 at the top. Yeah.
And I know one might say, well, how is because the casting check is a straight D20 roll with little in the way of modifiers, except for a higher ceiling, higher reroll floor at higher tiers. One would say, how are you going to roll 27 on a D20? This is where the MP part of the equation comes in. Because you spend 2 MP as a buy-in, and you can spend additional MP to boost the casting check that you roll. You have to declare how much MP you're spending ahead of time. If you fail the roll, you can take 1/3 of what you rolled and apply it as a one-off bonus and try again the next round.
Okay. So you continue casting, focusing on the spell to try and get it cast the following round.
Yeah.
Okay.
Essentially, you're either paying in time or you're paying in MP.
Another risk reward system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, somebody did ask me once, couldn't you just blow through a bunch of MP to guarantee a success? Yes, you could. You could spend 20 MP to make sure that high level spell you want to cast goes off. The problem is you just spent 20 MP.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that all sounds actually quite fascinating. It sounds really good. So if you're casting a fireball, you potentially could uplift the rank of the fireball if it's cast at a lower rank, and then add meta magics to make it a really difficult cast, and spend your spell points to try and bring that into reasonable range. Yeah, I think that's quite a neat system. I do like it.
There are a few exceptions to the rule, though.
Yeah.
Innate magic always has a rank range of 1 to 6, but the approach is you roll a d20 and that determines the rank that you're casting. You don't declare the rank in advance.
Ooh, nice.
On the other hand, you don't have to spend that buy-in MP.
Yeah.
And you can spend MP to apply meta magics to it or increase its rank by 1.
I like that. I really do like that approach.
What's the limit on what's the limit on casting these innate spells? Can I keep casting one?
If you've got it, obviously it's going to take up your action to do it, and you only have one action. But you can keep casting. It's just a matter of if you roll that d20 and you roll a 2, you're not getting anything.
Yeah.
And of course, that spells don't automatically hit. You still have to roll a magic attack roll in order for them to hit unless you're targeting allies with some sort of support effect.
Yeah.
So just because you can keep casting doesn't mean you're always going to hit.
So it's a kind of double hurdle here. You're casting once. So when you cast, you roll to see what rank you're casting at.
Mm-hmm.
Or you decide what rank you want to cast and see whether you do that. And then if the spell's affecting an opponent, you're rolling your magic attack versus what they've got a magic defense.
Yep.
And you got to beat that magic defense or equal it.
Yep.
And the spell then lands. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's an interesting. What happens with an AoE?
Obviously, I'm not doing any sort of grid combat. Mm. Some people have pushed for that. I've made very clear why I chose not to do that. Multi-target spells will usually have a die roll to determine how many targets, and we operate on a front row, back row approach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, as an example, let's look at Firaga. Firaga's area is 1 plus 1d6 targets of any row. You'd roll a d6, add 1. You can pick that many targets to have their magic defense check if the spell goes off. So let's say you're casting that at 5th rank. You need to be at a TN of 15. You do that, and the attack lands. You're doing 2d10 damage, 2d10 fire damage to that amount of targets.
Yeah.
That is how our AoE effects work.
Okay.
There are some spells like Firaja, which is the 4th rank version of fire, or the 4th tier version of it, that just affects all enemies. So you don't have to roll for that. It's just if the enemy is on the board, they are a target.
Yeah.
And it's not a case where you have to roll a separate attack for each one. You're rolling one attack and checking it against all targets' relative defenses.
Okay. And if it's a hit, you do your damage. If it's a miss, is it half damage or no damage?
No damage.
Okay. Brilliant.
So I have a question there. Say, for example, you roll your d6 and you get a number, and it's more than the number of enemies you have. If you have allies, will it actually hit allies, or are
No.
allies automatically excluded?
It will not hit allies.
And that's very Final Fantasy, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
It's always
the spirit of Final Fantasy is just oozing from this,
Absolutely.
which is what I would expect in this kind of a game.
And that's what I love. But that's why I wanted to ask that question, because it really just shows the ethos of Final Fantasy coming throughout.
Yeah. And it's, some people might say you're giving up a bit of realism, but I don't see it like that, because the combat becomes a story in itself. And your attacking is a bit of that story. And then when you're casting, you're waiting for that opportunity to get a group together and cast that spell on the group.
I will be flat out honest.
Yeah.
I've had to deal with the realism argument in one form or another my whole life.
Yeah.
And a mantra that I've always had is believability over realism.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the same way
Absolutely.
Do you remember the poster for the original Superman movie? And the tagline at the bottom of it?
I'm trying to remember.
This is the first Christopher Reeves film?
Yep.
Yep.
You will believe that a man can fly.
Yeah, believability versus realism. Yeah, I see exactly where you're going.
People want to be taken along for the ride.
Yeah.
It's when you break that that immersion, when you break your own rules in the story that you've established. That's where the problem lies.
Yeah.
100% agree.
Focusing on realism bores me to death.
Well, we don't want to play in EastEnders, do we? I mean,
No,
if we wanted that, we'd be watching telly, but we're not. We're playing games because we want that level of fantasy.
Yeah, absolutely. I have the opportunity to take part in a one shot, that would be fantastic, because I think I'd love playing something like this. Careful, your camera's going to start to.
Oh no, my camera will start again.
You just gestured to your camera.
Oh
dear. This brings me nicely on to recovery, and so you've got hit points and magic points.
Yep.
And how do they recover?
So there is full recovery between battles.
Excellent.
Recovery in combat can be done through spells. It can be through certain features, and it can be done through consumables. Now, with consumables, because I wanted them to be as active as a part of the game as anything else, and I wanted to avoid the 99 megalixirs problem, I had it that consumables are essentially a once per encounter ability you can use. When you are between encounters, you get that use back, and consumables are taken up at the downtime phase. And then you have to go and do acquisition checks to get new consumables or pull them out from storage.
So if you've got your consumables are effectively potentially different types of potions you might think are useful in a combat, and you can use one consumable full stop in a combat, in an encounter, or one of each.
One of each consumable slot that you have.
So if I quaff a healing potion in one of my slots, it kind of goes on cooldown until after the encounter.
Yep.
Okay. Can you, if I've got 4 consumables I can bring in, could I bring in 4 healing potions?
Yep. Each one is going to take up one slot.
Yeah. Okay. There's a lot of flexibility around that, and I quite like that. Yeah.
Yep. I will note that if somebody has the chemist job, they get more slots.
I like that.
I do like that. So your jobs can really begin to alter the base rules that everybody abides by and begin to break some of those rules in certain situations. Yeah.
The idea is that everybody can do a certain thing, but some jobs are going to be better at it. For example, there is the question that was brought up to me in the past of, why would I pick black or white mage when I can get access to both spell lists as a red mage? The answer to that is there are things that a black mage can do that a red mage can't, and vice versa. For example, red mages are essentially switch hitters, because every time they cast a black or white spell, they gain a point of imbalance that boosts casting rolls for that type of spell and penalizes the opposite. This is capped at 5. You can purge that imbalance and reset it to 0. So think of red mages casting as 2 ends of a scale. On the other hand, they do not get the expanded use of elemental effects like black mage does, or the weaponized overhealing that white mage does.
I like that approach. I really do love that approach, which is it's that nuance of they may look very similar, but there are some really fundamental differences that make them very unique. Yeah.
And I know in some of the games, red mages are also decent at fighting, but because of how I did weapons, that would have been rendered moot, which is why I leaned into the switch hitter approach.
Okay. So I'm just making sure I understand the red mage. So if I cast an offensive spell, I go into imbalance, but it favors me continuing to cast offensive, or should I now cast should I go from black magic to white magic back to black magic, or is it favoring one?
It is favoring one. You get 1 point of imbalance. You get a +1 to to casting rolls of that type. So you'd either get black or white imbalance.
Yeah. So if I go blasting in a fight, and by the 3rd round or 4th round, the party need healing, I'm gonna have a hard time casting a white magic spell.
You are going to have a harder time, but you can, as an action, reset it.
Yeah.
At higher tiers, you can switch it. Or there are things like Scale Breaker, which you get at 3rd circle, which lets you double the effects of imbalance, but after the spell resolves where you're using it, it resets. There's also things like hybrid spell where you can cast a black and white magic spell at the same time, or things like Paradigm Shift at 6th circle, where you can flip the imbalance.
Apologies, Mildra. I'm not laughing at you. I am laughing at Lily, who's decided to come in and stomp over everything and yell at me. So apologies for interruptions.
No worries.
And Vicky, do you want to put yourself back center? Put your hand up.
Oh yeah, that's because I put my hand
in
up
the
earlier.
camera. Make sure it goes green.
Yes.
Yeah, is it flashing? Bring it down. There you go. Camera's now locked in.
Yep.
There we go.
I'm all right.
We're not going to get seasick.
No. I'll blame Lily. Apologies for the interruption, Mildra.
Yeah. But at the same time, with white magic, you can have it where the rule of 3 does other matters, or if you're casting at somebody who's already topped out, you can have it that the excess amount of healing becomes holy damage against the target.
Oh, I like that.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. Whilst we're talking healing and damage, and whilst we're also talking about the big trope of Final Fantasy games, which is typically, unless it's story scripted, you can't die. How do you die, or how do you deal with death in the system?
I do not have express death rules, and this was a choice. This was a personal choice because I was of the. If I'm going to be keeping that vibe, I felt that I should take an approach not far removed from 7th C, in the sense that character deaths should be a dramatic moment. It should be a pivotal moment in a given story, rather than being a mechanic.
Yeah.
Because when you think about character deaths in Final Fantasy, whether it be Gallus' last stand against X death in FF5, or Eris's death in 7, or even the fake out with Squall at the end of Disc 1 in 8. Character death, or the numerous character deaths in 2. Character deaths are the culmination of a dramatic moment. Somebody who is either dying as part of a tragedy or dying as a heroic last stand. And that I do not feel that's something that I can put mechanics to.
Yeah.
So the answer to that question is basically if it suits the story, and it should, and that kind of lethality should be up to the table, not me.
Okay, I quite like that, because it means that, is that something that you'd expect the GM to discuss with the table, say before they started, or?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, session 0, setting the scene. These are the rules we're playing by. Players agree, and you go from there. I think that's sensible. So I take it within the rules, you kind of describe potentially some of the options, but then leave it up to the table to make any calls.
That is pretty much how I do it. And this is why I brought up 7th C 2nd edition, because it is going for that kind of high drama approach.
Yeah. Okay, I really do like that. I'm going to pivot now to physical combat, if I can, because we've talked a lot about spells. Physical combat, is it a very similar thing? Sorry, spells. I know you love your spells, Vicky. You love them, and I'm partial to a good spellcaster.
I do really like the whole way that you've done the spells. I have to say, I really like that.
Yeah.
But we have to talk about limit break. We've got to.
Oh yes, let's do weapons, and then we'll go on to limit break.
Okay. So I will note I have a complicated relationship with a lot of caster players in my history when it comes to playing TTRPGs, because one of the things I very much wanted to avoid was having magic just completely outstrip martial characters.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
this is something that has been a pet peeve of mine since day 1.
And ours.
Yeah.
And I am well aware that there are certain people who say fighters aren't supposed to be powerful. I tell those people to go piss up a rope.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Because the approach that I wanted to take is that you have just as much variety and versatility as a martial focused character as if you are a caster. Whichever one you take, you have advantages and you have disadvantages. And as I hinted at, there's no way to talk about physical combat without talking about the weapon system.
Yeah.
And with weapons and armor, I chose not to have a defined weapon and armor list. There's a lot of those weapon and armor lists very much skew towards one brand of fantasy, and that's not going to fly. Or you have a situation where if certain litigious role-playing games are supposed to be viable for all forms of fantasy, why do exotic weapons exist in them? because what may be exotic what may be an exotic weapon in one culture might be common in another. For example, a Qatar. If you're dealing with a very European-leaning fantasy, yeah, that's going to be an unusual weapon. But what if you're leaning further eastward? In that same vein, why are shields an absolute must when in some cultures' version of fantasy, shields aren't even going to be a thing? Like, when's the last time you saw a samurai with a kite shield?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's a very European thing, isn't it?
It very much is. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that, but as the saying goes, don't piss on my head and tell me it's raining.
And of course, you're talking about a computer game series where armor, until the most recent iterations, really wasn't a thing in the game. It was, I believe, braces, I think, were used as your defensive mechanism.
There's always been, because of that, I wanted to play a bit loose with that concept. So instead, we have a tag-based system. Because while I was doing this, I was listening to wasn't listening. I was going through an interview with Brandon Sanderson. I wasn't the one doing the interview. God, I wish I was, but I wasn't. And in that interview, he was talking about the inspiration for the Shard Blades in the Stormlight Archive. Good book series, by the way.
Yeah.
And he had cited that he wanted to create a weapon that had that same cool factors when people first saw the lightsaber in the original Star Wars, or first saw the Buster Sword in Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
And the idea that came to me was some IP is going to have that same kind of cool factor weapon for people, and they're going to want to bring it into their campaigns. So we went with a tag-based system so that people could more easily integrate it instead of just house ruling and again being told swim, damn it. So
yeah,
weapons and armor are made of three components: the meta type, which is whether it's a physical weapon or an arcane weapon. Basically, if it uses your physical combat modifier and whether it targets physical defense. And arcane, whether basically if it's in that case it's a magical combat modifier and targeting magical defense. And if you have an arcane weapon, feats or abilities that refer to physical combat modifier or physical defense use the opposite while it's equipped. And the template, which is close, dueling, and great for melee, and point blank, short, and long for ranged. This determines the base damage dice, as well as how the weapon will use extra effort, which I'll get to in a minute. The third component is choosing 3 weapon tags, which add their own quirks to the weapon. For example, Brutal has it that ones on weapon damage dice are re-rolled. You can take that up to 3 times to roll 1s or 2s, or 1s, 2s, and 3s. Bane, you pick one type of NPC. When you're attacking that type of NPC, you automatically hit on natural 15s. Guardian, if an opponent rolls a natural 10 or less when they hit you, you only take half damage. Things like Swarm, you deal half damage on a miss, but it's still treated as a miss and not a hit.
Yeah.
And that's more or less how every weapon works. Armor works in a similar way, but it has a different set of tags. It doesn't have as many tags because it's hard to have because a lot of potential tags we realize work better as magic item enchantments, but there's still quite a few. And we do give a bunch of examples. And those examples when it comes to weapons, those examples can range from axes, bludgeoning weapons, flexible weapons. Flexible weapons being things like flails or whips. Hand weapons, so this is where you have your chakrams and gloves. shields, because a shield should be as much of a weapon as you two know personally.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Swords, certain more exotic weapons like a chainsaw.
Have you got the gunblade?
Yes and no. We have a tag called Gunarm that is exclusive to the Gunbreaker job.
Mm-hmm.
Gunbreaker is an independent job that is the job you pick if you want to do the Gunblade, but you're not limited to a blade in that sense. And in fact, the art that we have for the Gunbreaker has a gun hammer, because I learned about the Festival of the Exploding Hammers and got a wonderful, awful idea. But I wanted to make clear that if somebody's doing Gunbreaker, they don't have to use the same gunblade that Squall used in FF8, for instance. But I also was very clear about what does and doesn't count as a gunblade, or a gun arm in this case. If it is one of those weapons that can do a melee attack and a ranged attack through a transformation, that doesn't count. The gun part has to be enhancing a melee attack.
Okay.
So things like the Blaze Fire Saber that Lightning has in FF13 doesn't count.
Yeah. Okay, that's, do you know what? It sounds like an incredibly versatile weapon system
Yes.
where you can pretty much, if you come up with an idea of a weapon, you can select the tags to support what that weapon does thematically.
Yes.
Yeah.
We also realized that we could reflavor the weapon to be martial arts fighting styles.
Yeah.
So we ended up having that as a sidebar. So things like Savat or Baji Kwan or Mala Yuda can have their own equivalents. In addition to that, I mentioned the extra effort rule.
Yeah.
So I've never been the biggest fan of the fact that in some games, no matter how high you beat defense, you still do the same amount of damage unless you crit.
Yeah.
So, and I wanted to give D4s a bit more chance to shine, aside from when I use them as the worst trap ever. And with every weapon, it has what is known as an extra effort threshold, and spell attacks have this as well. This will usually be 3, 4, or 5. For every number of points that you beat the target's defense with your attack roll, you roll 1d4 as an extra bit of damage. This extra bit of damage is exempt from any sort of boost. So, for example, if you've got a light weapon which has a extra effort threshold of 3, every 3 points you beat defense, you roll 1d4 in addition to your normal damage.
Oh, that's nice.
So if you beat it by 9, you're rolling 3d4. The trade-off is that light weapons have the lowest base damage at d6. The heavier weapons have it at d10, but their extra effort threshold is 5. So can light weapons do a lot of damage? Yes, but they can't do it consistently. Can heavy weapons do a lot of damage? Yeah, but they're more static.
Okay, that's an interesting
like
kind of
that.
mathematical way of doing it, yeah.
Because I didn't want a situation where someone only has a knife because they can't afford or are proficient in a sword. No, if you're picking a knife, it's because it's the weapon that suits your playstyle. This, oddly enough, is something that was loosely inspired by my time with certain FPS, especially my time replaying Call of Duty World at War and some of the other CODs, where the perk system is less about raw numbers and more about emphasizing a playstyle. Like if you're somebody who's in, say, Modern Warfare 2, who's going to be using the light machine gun a lot, you're probably picking a perk like Scavenger, which gives you more ammo on ammo pickups.
Yeah. Okay. before we move on to limit breaks, because I know Vicky really wants to get into limit breaks, and I'm quite intrigued. When it comes to what a martial can do in combat, a spellcaster will look at their spells and decide what spell they're casting. With a martial character, do they get things like cleave attacks, whirlwind attacks, tripping attacks, stuff like that? How do they work?
A lot of those things are going to be in feats, but there is a selection of standard actions that anybody can do that martials are going to be better at, just because they have more options, especially from their choice of job.
Yeah.
So these are things like Bull Rush, which is an athletics check versus the target's skill defense. Instead of doing damage, they can knock down. Some builds can do both an attack and a Bull Rush at the same time. Charge attack, which has that you make a weapon attack with a number of banes equal to up to your highest circle. If the attack hits, you get a number of extra effort dice for free equal to the amount of banes you took.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah.
Trip, which is a acrobatics versus skill defense that inflicts knockdown.
Yeah.
Feint, which is a misdirection versus the target's skill defense. If you succeed, the target suffers damage vulnerability X, physical or magical. Damage vulnerability, I should note, doesn't add or subtract to the damage total. It maximizes or minimizes the damage dice. So if you've got damage vulnerability 1 and you take 2d6 damage, one of those dice is automatically a 6.
Okay.
Things like grapple, which is athletics versus skill defense. The target suffers entangled 1. Every turn after that, they have to repeat the roll. While the target is entangled by it, you can either injure them, so inflict your melee weapons damage divided by 2, or throw, where they are no longer entangled, but they're knocked down.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're mentioning skill defense here. Is this like a static defense that is used on each character when a skill is used against them?
Yes. Sometimes it may be an attack roll versus skill defense. NPCs don't have individual skills. They just have a skill modifier and a skill defense stat. Each skill that a PC has a skill defense, which is just their skill modifier plus 10.
Got it. So instead of having an opposed roll, only one person rolls, and if there's an appropriate skill, it's skill plus 10.
Yep.
Okay. Nice and simple. Nice and easy. Is now the time to look at limit breaks?
No, it isn't. No, it isn't, because we need to talk about something that we've missed, that I think we've missed out, which probably means we haven't. And that is, we've been mentioning things that we can do, and we're talking about actions and rounds and things like that. How long is your round, and what can you do in a round? Because we talked about actions, but we haven't talked about movement. We haven't talked about, is there anything other than a single action you can do? So I want to sort of circle around to that before we start getting into more sort of interesting stuff.
When it comes to the combat round, I assume the standard 5 second, but I don't have that as a hard and fast. It's really up to the table how much in-game time the round is, because that kind of question is, I'm only willing to ask that if it's in a context specific situation. Like and in those kind of situations, I would just say an event is going to happen in the next 5 rounds.
Yeah.
That's more down the mythos versus setting sort of pillar again, isn't it?
Yeah, and that kind of thing is far too contextual for me to put a hard and fast mechanic on it, because it's going to vary from table to table. But because of the fact that I'm not doing movement actions or anything like that, everybody gets one action, full stop.
Okay.
When it comes to reactions, there's no limit on it, but you can only do one reaction per action that triggers it. And the most common reaction is going to be dodge or parry, which is dodge is attack versus skill. If you succeed, you take no damage. If you fail, you take damage and you don't get the damage reduction bonus from your armor. If for parries, it is attack versus attack. If you succeed, you inflict damage based on your weapon. if you fail, like with dodge, you take the damage you would have anyways, and you don't get your bonuses from armor. Parry can only be used on melee attacks.
Is there any way of avoiding any sort of missile attacks or anything like that? Can you do something to prevent those coming in?
Dodge.
Dodge.
Yeah. So if you got a shield, you can't parry missile attacks with a shield.
You not necessarily, though. There are feats that allow you to use parry on ranged attacks. The reason I didn't put that as a shield is because, again, a tag-based design. So I didn't want, because I had thought about putting it on Guardian at one point, but I realized that would have made Guardian, as far as the tag, be too useful.
Yeah.
So instead, being able to parry ranged attacks is a feat.
Yeah.
I like that.
Okay, and you mentioned a reaction. Is it one reaction per round you have, or one reaction to each action?
It is the latter.
Okay. So if you're being attacked by 10 opponents, you could attempt to parry or dodge all 10, as long as they were, either attacking you in melee or you with an attack that you could dodge.
Yes.
I like that too.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Limit breaks. Yeah. Limit
Definitely.
breaks.
I love limit breaks.
I mean, I loved limit breaks from Final Fantasy VII. They were incredible to unlock visually. Absolutely spectacular. What are they?
So I had made the decision early on that we were not going to use a limit break as some sort of uber attack. But by the way, the just to get it out of my system, the feat to parry ranged attacks is a melee combat feat called Arrow Guard.
Okay.
So
like
you could have that as
early.
You could have that as early as first level. But there's even ones where there's even a basic combat feat where you could parry spells.
Wow, nice.
I like that. No, actually, I'm a spellcaster. No, I don't like that at all.
If you're a spellcaster, there are certain jobs that you are going to absolute hate, like Rune Knight. Who you cast a spell on Rune Knight and they'll go, thanks for the free MP, idiot. Or Spirit Master, because Spirit Master can shift who has buffs and debuffs. So you go, I cast haste on myself, so I'm going first this round. And a Spirit Master can say, no, you're not. He's going first.
Oh. That's just quite cool.
Yeah. We took I know somebody might say, isn't that unbalanced? We take the Brawl Minus approach when it comes to balance. In the sense, Brawl Minus was a mod for Smash Brothers Brawl that was a response to a nerfing mod called Brawl Plus, which tried to nerf a lot of the overpowered stuff. Brawl Minus takes the approach of make everybody overpowered in some way.
Yeah.
Because if everyone's OP, nobody is. Obviously, it's not like it's an automatic win button. You have, like, for example, in that Ganondorf's Warlock Punch fully charged is a one-hit KO, but you still have to charge the thing, and charging it, you're a sitting duck.
Yeah.
So, I like those approaches of, yes, this thing can be really busted in the right hands, but it requires the right hands.
And I think it works in a Final Fantasy setting. I really do. Because your mindset is that it's that kind of mindset you kind of expect that level of power when you're playing that kind of a game.
Yeah. There are other games that want to do fantasy Vietnam. This is not one of them.
No.
But,
limit breaks. Come on.
So
what are your limit breaks?
So as I said, I did not want to do the limit break as an uber attack. Because mechanically speaking, for something like this, I didn't think that would be all that interesting. Especially when you're going to have plenty of options for uber attacks as is. So what would be the point there? So I also didn't want to add limit breaks as a gauge you fill up, because that creates even further questions that need to be answered as far as the proper rate of the gauge and the like. And also, if it's based on damage, that's going to overly favor some archetypes over others.
Yeah.
Which is actually why I like the whole overdrive modes thing that was in Final Fantasy X, where building up that limit break wasn't explicitly tied to just damage in late game. Now, the approach that we took is loosely inspired by the epic abilities from Final Fantasy D6, the game breaker abilities from Fantasycraft, and the 2-hour abilities from Final Fantasy XI, which were these powerful expansions of your jobs, but when you activated it, you couldn't use it again for 2 hours. A limit break in our system is something that every class and job has one of. So you'll have a total of 4 potential ones. It is a buff that targets you and lasts for the end of the encounter. You can only have one of them active at a time, and you can only activate it when you're below half health, when you're below what we call the SOS threshold.
Okay. Yeah.
The design principle for limit break is that it doesn't do anything new. It just does what you're already doing with that job or class better. So
it's almost like panic mode.
Yeah. For example, the Warrior's limit break is Action Surge, where for the rest of the encounter, they can make 1 weapon attack per round that doesn't use their action.
Wow. Okay.
That's nice.
So to pander to Vicky for a moment, I'll bring up the Black Mage limit break, which is Ultima. For the remainder of the encounter, effect dice spells from black magic spells are treated as their maximum result and explode once as if the power surge roll had occurred.
Very nice.
I forgot to mention that the spells have a rule called power surge where damage dice explodes.
So if you roll max, you roll an add.
If you roll max on the damage die, you roll them again. Add it again.
Yeah. If you roll max on the second one, is it a chain explode?
If you roll a nat 20 on the spell attack, it's just treated as a crit. Crits just double your damage dice.
Okay.
If you
I like that.
If you any die that rolls their maximum result on the damage part explodes. So you'd roll that die again, add the result you get. It doesn't explode more than once.
Got it. Okay. So the crit almost explodes all your dice and gives you the maximum of that explode.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
I like that. I really do.
Yeah. On the other end, with Cosmic Mage, their limit break is time compression. You choose 1 opponent for the remainder of the encounter. All opponents' actions resolve at that opponent's initiative -1. For example, Paladin, which has the limit break of Predwen. For the remainder of the encounter, whenever you are successfully using cover, you can automatically counterattack.
Oh, that's nice. That's kind of bodyguard skill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A limit break then. So I've been knocked to half my hit points.
Yep.
It's my action. Can I just declare which limit break I'm using?
Yes.
And it kind of kicks in. Can I only use 1 limit break?
Yes.
Can I shoot myself in the leg?
Why do you want to shoot yourself in the leg?
Well, then I can get to half hit points so I can have my limit breaks.
Do you know what?
Nope.
Yeah.
Attacks specifically have to be against opponents, so no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Well,
You got to be in the spirit of the game. Don't be a rules lawyer here.
No, I had to ask the question because I know people that would do that.
Oh, we do.
So,
we know a lot of people who would do that.
I wanted to ask the question because that's the sort of thing I can see certain individuals trying. But I just love, the worst thing about this interview is I've now got the Final Fantasy music going through my head. Right, so this is your fault, Mildra.
Yep.
Okay.
I regret nothing.
I've got this urge to just boot up all my Final Fantasy games and play them one after the other.
Once again, I regret nothing. But
Good. Good. I've noticed we've done 2 hours now. There's still,
I've still
I'd like
got
to go
questions.
into magic gear and then discuss creatures. Have you got time to continue at this point? Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you want to take another quick break?
Yeah, I could do with another cup of tea. Would you like a cup of tea, Mildred? I would go and get you one, but we're a bit far away.
Yeah, I know. I've got some tea in front of me.
Fantastic. Cool. We will be a few minutes and then we'll continue. And because
I'm going to put some treats out for the cats to try and encourage them to
absolutely
go away for 5 minutes.
So we'll be back in a minute. Yep.
15 past.
15 past. Yeah, let's go for that.
I can go with that.
Cool.
Right, I'm back. Vicky is deploying treats, so she won't be long. In fact, I can hear her there.
I'm back. Apologies, Mildra. We had to deploy the treats. Otherwise, we're going to have them, tap dancing on us all.
I know.
Doing.
My camera was drifting. There we go. Okay, we ready?
Yep.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about combat. We've talked about magic. We've talked about what creates your character, the race, classes, job system. And of course, there's one thing that any person who plays Final Fantasy games absolutely loves, and that's the magic gear. How does enchanted gear, magic gear work in your system?
So, consumables and magic items share a similar 4-tier setup. That is lesser, greater, relic, and artifact. And those 4 tiers determine the strength of effect with them. Now, as I mentioned before, the consumables are on the same tier. The chemist gets a few extra slots at the highest tier that they have. Items, consumables will be on this tier as I mentioned. Lesser items are simple ones that have a significant effect but aren't exactly flashy. Greater items can add to your kit rather than be character defining. Relic items are adventurer milestones. Artifact items are entire histories all to themselves. That is the way we've gone about it. Now, when it comes to magic items, these can be weapons, these can be armor, or they can be something else. Each tier has a certain pool of enchantment points. Lesser has 2, greater has 3, relic has 4, artifact has 5. Every magic item is a collection of these enchantments that cost either 1, 2, or 3 points. Depending on the tier of the magic item, the effect might have a boosted version of it, or it might even be not even matter. For example, the Alang enchantment costs 1 point and has the same effect regardless of tier. It's just that the length of the effect is going to be based on the tier it's put on. Now, that is an example of a 1-point enchantment. Another example of a 1-point enchantment would be spellcasting. You can choose 1 spell, you can cast that spell as an action. The spell doesn't cost MP. If it's an innate spell, it still follows the same rules. The number of times you can cast it is based on the spell's rank. Rank 5 or lower spells can be cast a number of times equal to your mind, spirit, or persona modifier. Pick 1. Rank 6 or higher spells can be cast a number of times per session, equal to that same modifier. And innate spells can be cast a number of times per scene, equal to 1/3 your character level. So that is an example of that one. We have things like Monster Killer, which gives boons on weapon or spell attacks and deals 2d6 extra damage against that type of monster. Then when it comes to 2-point enchantments, that's where you get things like Auto Condition, which works the way you think it does. Higher tiers just grant a longer effect. Feat Training, which gives you a feat. And then there's 3-point enchantments like Aura Break, which can only be done on relics and artifacts, which let you utilize limit breaks regardless of your HP value.
Oh, that's nice.
Or things like Keen, which doubles your critical success threat range, as well as doubles the threat range granted from other effects, such as Boon or Bane trading.
Yeah.
There's also things like Speed, which gives you an additional weapon attack, which can only, again, a lot of the 3-point ones can only be done on relics or artifacts, and things like Vorpal and Unbending can only be done on artifacts. But that doesn't mean that there isn't uses for lower cost enchantments. And the one type of weapon that we didn't give an example of is Ultima Weapon, simply because I felt that there were other ways to do Ultima Weapon. But things like Ragnarok, has the enchantments of Increased Initiative, Increased Critical, Element Enhancer, Shadow, and Detecting. It is a great weapon that has the tags of Brutal 1, Guardian, and Elemental Shadow, which basically means that the weapon has the Guardian effect that I talked about before, it deals shadow damage instead of physical damage, and rerolls ones on its damage dice.
Yeah.
It also gives you a bonus to initiative. It gives you a bonus to your critical threat range. You do extra shadow damage, and you can detect things in the environment. That is used as an example within the expansion Ultimania guide, and specifically in one part we call Gilgamesh's Summer Catalog. That is where we have the idea of ultimate weapons. This is more inspired by things like the artifact weapons in Final Fantasy XI and the relic weapons in 14. The idea is that it is a weapon that develops with you through the way treasure dice work. You just roll one of them separately to generate progress points. When you generate a sufficient amount of progress points, which is I believe, which is going to work on the same way as faction progression, so about 20 points each. The weapon goes up in rank. Starts at rank 0 and goes all the way up to rank 5.
Nice.
It does mean that because of the fact that it gets one enchantment period, regardless of point cost, you could end up with weapons that break the normal limits.
Yeah.
This is traded off for the fact that you have to work to that point. Because unlike getting a magic item, it's when you get it at the start, it's worse than getting a normal. It's no different from getting a normal weapon, but you put more time and effort with it, and you get something busted.
Yeah.
I suppose one example of this kind of thinking is the wooden sword in the original Ninja Gaiden. Xbox original Ninja Gaiden, I should clarify, where it has a lot of ranks. It does absolute garbage damage compared to the dragon sword. But if you level it up all the way, it evolves into the ore, which is the strongest weapon in the game.
It's your risk and reward again, isn't it? You slowly have to build something up to get something amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry, you mentioned treasure dice. What are treasure dice?
So I'm using a milestone approach
treasure
to XP, and treasure dice ties into the way I handle loot, the way I handle acquisition, and the like. Because I didn't want to just use a standard gil system, so that where people could just hoard a bunch of gil, then spend it all in the shop. I want it to be part of the gameplay experience.
Okay.
So, with that in mind, when it comes to getting things, this is done through an acquisition check. Now, acquisition is based on your stake, which is kind of like your monetary attack, I guess I could say. Actually, let me clarify that because I got things crosswired. Your monetary attack is a stat called resources.
Okay.
Stake is a kind of merchant MP that you have, where you can spend stake to boost a D20 roll to get an item. You can boost the roll in a 1-to-1 if you declare it beforehand, or 2-to-1 if you fail the roll and want to try and still get the item. Getting items are on 2 tiers: gil and treasure. And the approach is that with gil, these are mundane items. Treasure are the more special items, including magic items as well as certain goods and services. Basically, if it's something hard to come by, it's probably going to be treasure. Treasure has a TN range at a higher floor than gil. Trying to get a lesser gil item is just a TN of 10. Whereas an artifact tier, it's 25. For treasure type, it goes from 20 to 35. And if you're acquiring multiple items at once, it adds 1, 2, 3, or 4 to the TN, depending on the extra item you're adding. So does it mean you can grab a bunch of stuff and have to at once? Yeah, you're just going to deal with a high T. And
then if you can you still get boons for your treasure rolls?
if the GM feels that it's appropriate, yes. Now,
So
where the treasure dice come in is how we handle loot drops, because instead of building an XP budget when it comes to monster creation, each modifier adds to the treasure dice. This dice is first determined by the difficulty tier of the monster, which is on 4 tiers: normal, notorious, boss, and end boss. This determines the floor of their stats as well as the treasure dice. Normal, the treasure dice is D6. For notorious, it's D8. For bosses, it's D10. For end bosses, it's D12. Each modifier that you put on said NPC beyond the basics adds 1 point to the roll. When a number of points are added up equal to the die facing, the static modifier is reset and an extra die is added. So if you're adding 6 points of modifiers onto a normal monster, instead of D6 plus 6, it becomes 2D6.
Doesn't that mean that you've got this awkward situation where the creature's more powerful, but the treasure's less powerful because you're taking a static number and putting it into a random range?
When it's done, it's reset. And the thing with it is, what counts as modifiers can be some boost to the initial traits. However, the higher up the difficulty you go, the less you can take advantage of it. Normal can be boosted 3 times, notorious only twice, bosses only once, and end bosses can't be boosted in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
But modifiers can be things like giving them a job feature, giving them an extra attack, giving them a modifier to trait, and certain effects can allow for higher rolls on treasure dice. And this is especially the case if you have a merchant in the party. Especially since merchants also have access to Guild Toss, which uses stake as an attack.
Okay.
So earlier on, when you were talking,
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned, and I've just got to go back to this before I forget it. So it was a little bit earlier on, and we were talking about something that can be only cast per session. Is that per game session?
Yeah.
Spells. So you actually, so it's not sort of an encounter. It's actually a whole. So it's almost like a once per day mechanic, or if you cover say 3 or 4 days, you can only actually cast it once that session.
Yep.
Ooh.
It's almost 1-to-1 time.
I am never doing 1-to-1 time.
Don't go down that route.
That was in relation to magic items that gave you access to spells.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jobs like the Magic Knight will get a version of that for free. Tied into because of the way they handle things, they get the spell at second circle. They get the spell storing enchantment. The catch with their version of the spell of that enchantment is that the spell is triggered by a weapon attack.
Okay, that's quite interesting actually. So you can attack and have a spell go off.
Yeah, which that kind of thing has happened with several weapons and magic items in the video games.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to just do I know Magic Knight and say 5 has their own spell list. I didn't feel like doing that because that would just be me repeating the Black Magic spell list.
Yeah.
So this was the approach I took instead.
Okay, no, that sounds quite interesting. Can I get back to the treasure, because I'm still trying to wrap my head around how this
See,
works.
I've dragged him back to spells because
I
it's
know
spells.
you like your spells,
Yeah.
but I like treasure. So yeah,
I like treasure.
every monster has a treasure die.
Yeah.
When at the end of the encounter, all those everybody rolls the treasure die that was generated and gains stake based on how much was rolled. When creating a monster, you can have it that they drop a specific item that costs 1 dice. So that 2d6 example, if you wanted that it always drops a potion, they lose 1d6 and they always drop a potion.
Yeah. If the creature was its treasure dice was a d6 plus 4,
Mm-hmm.
you could sacrifice the d6 and just be left with the plus 4, or do you lose the plus
No.
4 as well?
You need at least
So that's the big advantage of that big plus becoming an extra dice, is it gives you versatility when it comes to determining what that creature's dropped.
Yes.
And does the party decide? So is the party looking at all the treasure dice and all the creatures and deciding as a group what dice they want to keep and what do they want to trade in?
Everybody, the total amount of dice that are rolled, it's not a case of a pool that's divided among the party. Everybody rolls for it.
So it's almost like if the whole party's in it together, they get an individual award of that number of dice.
Yes.
See, I got it.
Yeah, that's interesting actually. So if you are soloing 5 creatures and they all have a treasure dice each, that's 5 dice. You get 5 dice at the end of the encounter.
Yeah.
If there's 4 of you in that same encounter, you all get 5 dice at the end of that encounter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's interesting. What's the reward for? In fact, there isn't, is there? So this is part of the whole balance thing, which is if it's just you attacking 5 creatures, you're going to get the same reward as whether it's you or multiples of you attacking that same creature or the same set of creatures.
Yep.
And I believe that was used in a couple of Final Fantasy games where it didn't matter. In fact, you were rushing to get your party full because there was no penalty to trying to do it with just 1 or 2 characters.
Mm-hmm.
Or no benefit for doing it with 1 or 2 characters.
Yeah.
Okay, so an individual can turn around and say, oh, I've got 5 dice, I'm going to trade this one in because that creature can give me this item and I'd rather have the item than the dice. I'm going to roll the rest of the dice and I now have this much stake.
The item part is GM determined when they're building the NPC.
Yeah. So with that, you said there was an option. So if the GM has decided that this creature will drop a healing potion,
mm-hmm.
he'll let the players know this creature can drop a healing potion, but it'll cost you the dice.
No, the GM decides that in advance and modifies the treasure dice beforehand.
Got it. So when he's designing the creature, he
mm-hmm.
reduces the dice by 1, and the creature will always drop that item instead of a treasure dice.
Yes.
So I have a question. Does that mean, say if there's 5 of you, there's 5 copies of that item? Say, is it 5 potions so that everybody gets a potion? Or is it one of those dice gets converted to 1 potion and then they have to fight amongst themselves?
It'd be the former. And it might seem that somebody could get way too many potions, but keep in mind, just because you have that many doesn't mean you can use that many.
Yeah.
You've got your consumables already locked in. That potion goes into a backpack, and at the end of that adventure, it goes into storage, potentially to be used as a resupply.
Yeah. In the same vein, when it comes to acquiring magic items or the like, or even just consumables, if you feel you wish to do that, you can convert them to stake.
Okay.
And in fact, depending on your level, you're going to have a certain number of loot slots, which is basically the magic items and the like that you can take back.
That you can take back. So when you go out adventuring, you can only take so many magic items back with you.
Yeah, anything beyond that is converted to stake.
Got it. Okay. I've done an encounter. We've got all our treasure dice. I've rolled a load of dice. I've got a bunch of stake. Do I spend that stake at this point, or is that stake kept till after?
Stake is kept.
Yeah.
At the start of a campaign or the start of a session, you'll always have a baseline amount of stake. If you start a campaign under that baseline, you move up to that baseline. This is usually 2 plus your level plus twice your persona modifier. This is going to be the floor for your stake.
Yeah.
And if your stake is lower than that number during the preparation phase, it moves up to match that number. When it comes to now, if you've got more than that, then you just have more than that.
Yeah. How do you spend your stake? Is it during the preparation phase?
Unless you're a merchant and spending it with stuff like Gil Toss and Gil Rain, which is just Gil Toss but multi-target, you're going to be spending that with acquisition checks. If you go up to the store and you say, I want that sword over there, the GM will tell you to make an acquisition check. The base stat for this is going to be your resources stat, which is usually 8 plus your persona mod plus your highest unlocked job circle. You'd roll that in a d20. Before you roll, you can spend stake to boost that roll.
So this is on a 1-for-1 basis, or after the roll on a 2-for-1 basis?
Yes.
Got it.
And obviously the TN for the roll is going to be based on the tier of the item and whether this is a gil or treasure roll.
What's the difference between the two?
Gil and treasure, certain items are dictated as being gil or treasure rolls. Most magic items are going to be treasure rolls if you try and get those. And the difference between the two is the range of TN.
So gil are more readily available, lower TNs. Treasure are rarer, higher TNs.
Yes.
Brilliant. Okay. And I can continue to try and acquire items. Is there a limit on how many items I can attempt to acquire?
That is a GM call.
Okay. So if I just get lucky, I can't be there and have a long list of items and start at the top and hope I get lucky on a d20 roll as I move through them one by one.
If you try and acquire multiple items at once, each item after the first is going to add to the total TN by a range of 1 to 4.
Okay. So it becomes more and more difficult. The more items you try and acquire, the more difficult. Hence, there's a little bit of risk and reward here, which is, do you go for the most the rarest item immediately because it'll be at the lower TN, and then try and get some of the more readily items, or do you try and go for the more guaranteed, knowing it's going to knock up the TNs on your rarer items?
Yeah, this is the reason I didn't put a hard cap on how many you can do, because there's going to be a natural soft cap due to the risk reward part you mentioned.
Yeah. Okay,
it's quite nice. Self-regulating, I call that.
Yes, I like that. So treasure, really, it's not about hunting certain creatures for certain treasure or anything like that, other than a boss creature that might drop a certain item.
Pretty much. Like I said, I wanted the act of getting items to be as much of an aspect of the game as using them. Yeah,
I like that.
This is where the merchant is going to really shine, because they have, as well as anybody who has things like equipment feats, because they are going to have more opportunities to take advantage of this. Okay. And of course, if one wants to use the advanced rules, they can try building items themselves.
So you got
me started. I
know you would. You got a catalog of items then that are pretty standard, but someone can just start putting tags together and create their own if they wanted to.
Yeah, that's what the item synthesis rules are for. But though Depending on the item that you're making, you are going to need the art of creation feat for it, and you're going to need certain elemental essences, of which there are 5 along 4 tiers.
So you got item creation.
Yes.
So you have to go and kill certain creatures for those essences.
The main way
I can't say that.
You can either through that, which is going to be a GM call, or through the orienteering roll, which is basically harvesting stuff from the environment.
I've got serious Final Fantasy VIII vibes and junctioning.
Yeah, instead of actually, we do have paramagic and junctions in the advanced rules as well.
Nice.
Same with materia, though. Materia are more like micro skill trees than the more linear approach in the games. And same thing with magicite. These are alternate forms of character creation and advancement, which if you do those, you are somewhat cutting yourself off from the typical class and job system.
Well, what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, I'd like to dig a bit more into the jobs, because someone did mention a chocobo riding knight sort of job that I'd like to dig into. So just a little bit more into the jobs. But then what I'd really also like to talk to you about is, you've mentioned the advanced system, we've touched on materia, and what I'd be interested in is your recommendations on whether you learn to play your system at a basic level, and then once you've mastered it, then you start bringing in the advanced, or do you think that people can pick up the advanced just by basically reading, taking it in, and going on? So we'll circle back around, if it's okay with both of you, to just sort of delve a bit more into the jobs, if that's okay with both of you.
That's cool with me.
Yep, same.
Cool. So can we just go through, because we went through the classes, we've touched on quite a lot around jobs, but we haven't actually, there was an additional 11, I think there were 4 classes, 11 jobs.
For each of the classes, and 11 that any class that are classless effectively. Yeah.
So what would be really good is just to get a sort of overarching sort of view of it, and then the chocobo knight, I think you called it. Really interested in that one for some unknown reason.
Yeah. So the chocobo knight is somewhat analogous to the cavalier or the rider or the lancer in fantasy craft. It is meant to be the born in the saddle archetype.
Yeah.
Now the mount in this case doesn't have to be a chocobo, but
yes, it does.
I had designed a chocobo knight job because my wording was, I want to see a lance charge on chocobos. Damn it.
Yeah.
I have been teased way too many times with chocobo cavalry. Like there was the appearance of them in Operation Mihen. There's Judge Master Sid in Tactics Advance. There was the courier in Type 0. But we have never had mounted combat. And Chocobo Knight is really, really good with bull rushes. Everybody can bull rush. They can do a lot more with it. They get their companion, which could be a chocobo, it could be a Magitech Machina, it could be a bike. It does not follow the rules we have for companions, but the way it works, the first thing you get with it is when you roll a natural 5 or less on initiative, you can re-roll. You got to keep the new roll. You get a boon on dodge rolls, but you can't take parry. And when making a bull rush, you inflict your weapons damage and inflict knockdown.
Nice.
You also get Knight's Challenge, where you can declare a challenge to one enemy. If you do, you make a bull rush immediately against that enemy. If it succeeds, you do 1 more damage die. So Knight's Challenge is essentially F that guy in particular. Their limit break is relentless momentum. So for the rest of the encounter, your weapon attacks are treated as bull rushes.
Beautiful.
So you're attacking and bull rushing at the same time all the time. That's why I said Chocobo Knight is basically a combat bully.
I really, really like it.
Essentially,
I always did all the chocobo racing. So Dean used to stop playing. I used to take over with the chocobo racing, and then they used to give it back to him afterwards.
Yeah,
I made Chocobo
you won all
racing
my
a
races.
skill game, and added some item drops to add a bit of the Mario Kart style chaos. But you know the idea with Chocobo Knight, if I were to give it a meme, it is, I don't care how big the room is. I said I'm charging.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly how I've pictured it. Just running around constantly mowing things down.
Yeah, that is Chocobo Knight. Does that mean because of how I have it set up that somebody could do the mounted archery approach and still count as it? Yes. Because that is absolutely ridiculous, and that fits completely within the theming.
Do you know what? The mixing of the classes, the class with jobs, it reminds me very much of the materia system, where you're looking at what the materia does and how it can combo with other pieces to create those unusual. So yeah, you could have, I don't know whether you got like a rapid shot kind of ability where you can shoot multiple opponents, but
I do.
Yeah, on a chocobo, you've triggered your limit break, and you're then shooting a load of opponents, trying to knock them onto their asses. And I can visualize that. That's fantastic. I like it.
Sniper has barrage at second circle.
So there we go. Chocobo Knight Sniper. I like it.
Right, I think I know what I'm playing. When are you doing a one shot?
I'm still writing out the one shot. I have an outline. I just need to refine it. It is going to be tied into the campaign setting idea that I've been kicking around called Project Gaia.
Lovely. Very apt name for a Final Fantasy setting.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's going to be the final name. That was just a shorthand when I was writing the thing out. But I should note, when it comes to jobs, none of the jobs require a specific weapon. So that there is nothing stopping you from using a melee weapon as sniper, for example. There is nothing in the rules that says you have to go barehanded if you go with monk. And there's nothing saying that you have to use a light weapon if you have thief. In the same vein, you don't have to have rods or the like if you are a mage. Those are things that I expressly wanted to avoid, in part because I want people to come up with crazy combinations, and also I felt that if I go on that weapon restriction, that's going to violate the mythos not setting approach that I'm going with.
Yeah.
The only exception to the rule is that gun arms from Gunbreaker have to be melee weapons.
That all makes perfect sense. I really like that. I like the approach. I love the fact you've got so many different things and different choices you can go down. And I do think the job system really does support that really well.
Yeah. I take it with the weapons, though. If I went sniper, barrage requires a missile weapon?
No,
so I could barrage with a melee weapon?
Yes.
But as the weapons are fairly flavoursome, other than a missile weapon, you could potentially hit the back rank whilst there's people in the front rank, whereas a melee weapon, you're forced to attack the front.
Your choice of weapon and whether you can hit the front or back row, it does play a factor. However, there are ways to mess around with it, and spells ignore that rule. What you can attack when it comes to spells is based on the individual spell.
Yeah.
But for example, if you're if you want to attack the back row with a melee weapon, you can. The main one that can do that is great weapons.
All right. Okay.
A great weapon can attack the front row from the back, and can attack front and back row from the front.
I quite like that. That's very thematic.
Yeah. Ranged weapons will have significantly more options from the front or back as far as what they can hit, but they have other disadvantages, namely the fact that with things like the benefits of melee combat feats, you need a melee weapon for it. For ranged combat feats, you need a ranged weapon for it. For basic combat feats, you just need a weapon. And your choice of melee or ranged weapon is really going to be about the play style that you're trying to represent, more than the most optimized approach. I'm not interested in making a game that is about searching for the most optimized build.
Yeah. Okay, that actually sounds really fascinating. So Vicky, does that satisfy your need for understanding the Chocobo Knight?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes.
Oh, brilliant. What was the second thing you said you wanted to circle back to?
Well, that was the cast per session, I think, which we've gone through.
Yeah.
And we've talked about the jobs in general, so I think that's pretty much covered.
I will note that when it comes to certain jobs that have been seen in other fantasy games, I wanted to do a different spin on them. Like Berserker does have the whole rage thing, but it is less based on a certain number of turns and then you're fatigued, and more on every round after the first that you use it, your botch range goes up by 1.
Oh, I like that.
When you botch, you go out of rage. You suffer a bane for all actions until the start of your next turn, and you can try again, but that is going to take an action. And there's also the fact that while you're raging, you can't dodge. On the other hand, the Dervish, who's kind of the speed-based sister to the Berserker, they have War Trance, which works in a similar way, but when you're in War Trance, you can't parry.
I like it. Yeah.
And with Fighter, the typical fighter class in a lot of games has that selling point of, oh, you can use any weapon. But that doesn't have as much impact as it should when most people are going to stick to one way they equip their character, and that's it.
Yeah.
So the approach that I took instead is the fighter is a walking arsenal. Everybody starts out with 1 custom weapon. The fighter starts with 3. And every circle that they go up, they get an additional 1. So by the time they hit 7th circle, they have 10 weapons that they have access to. And a lot of their abilities are built around using those weapons as a kind of stance dance, where they'll attack with 1, then switch to another one.
I like that.
Keep in mind the versatility of individual weapons and multiply that by 10, and you can kind of see what the fighter is doing here. And even more so with their limit break, where they're treated as if they have all of their Master of Arms weapons equipped.
Ooh, yeah.
The Weapon Master is the opposite end, where they are really, really good at one weapon that they choose as their focus weapon, which gives them additional benefits based on that weapon's tags. For example, I already mentioned Brutal, which has it that you reroll 1s. A Weapon Master with Brutal has it that weapon dice explode. If you take Brutal twice or 3 times, the explosion range is increased by 1 or 2.
All right. So instead of re-rolling a low number, it increases the explode range of the dice.
Oh, it does both.
It does both. So you re-roll low, but your explode range also increases.
Yeah.
Ah, nice. Yeah.
Like I said, Weapon Master is meant to be really, really, really good with one particular weapon they focus on.
Yeah.
I like that.
I do.
I have remembered my last question.
Go on.
Before we move on to the final questions. And it was, you mentioned, we've been talking about botch, and we've spoken about what happens when sort of crits go on, but we talk about the botch range increasing.
Mm-hmm.
And now, other than the fact that you just fail, I think I've heard you say other things that can happen when you botch. So I just want to understand a little bit more about botch and what sort of things can happen when you botch a roll. Because one, I love the fact that it's called botch. It's just fantastic. And I just want to understand what sort of things can go wrong when you botch.
I will note it's not called that in there. I just use that as my own personal habit.
Well, I actually really like it. So update the rules.
No.
Okay.
If you roll a nat 1, you automatically fail. If you
Yeah.
roll a natural number that's within your automatic failure range, which is what it is actually called in there, then you just fail. If the GM wants to add something that happens worse than that, that is the GM's call.
That's fair enough. That's great. And now, is there anything specific that you would like to raise that we haven't covered?
Well, first things first, can I just quickly talk about flying creatures?
Oh,
Yep.
oh.
Do you
course
have
you can.
flying creatures?
Yes, we do. One of the categories that is available for NPC creation is aerial.
Yeah.
Ah.
Does that mean
So-
melee can't affect them?
Not necessarily. They are not melee proof. This is not Magic the Gathering monsters with flying. All that it means is that they are treated as if they always have float. And when it comes to what float does, give me a moment to go where I had it.
But visually, I can see that, because when I used to watch you playing Final Fantasy, the creatures used to hover there and bang. I'm going to step my camera off again.
In Final Fantasy VII, certain flying creatures couldn't be attacked.
Yeah, that's too specific. If it's a mechanic that's only used for one game and nothing else, those kind of things I tended to avoid.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So float is a positive condition, and on GM discretion, you're immune to ground-based effects, and you can't be affected by knockdown or prone.
Which is quite a powerful defense against the Chocobo Knight and their bull rushers.
Yeah.
No.
That doesn't mean that. It means that a monster who has float can't
be knocked over.
Yeah, can't be knocked over.
And if you did an earthquake spell or something like that, they wouldn't be affected by it.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that works really well.
I did take a bit of nod when it came to how I handled float from my experience with the brothers in FF8. Because I remember the strategy guide I had at the time from GamePro told me a damn lie.
Yeah.
Where they said cast float on your allies and cast shell on them. And I kept losing that fight because I kept taking that approach and kneecapping myself. I guess the idea was because they have regen on themselves, if you do that, it's going to reduce their regen. But it also means reducing the spell damage you're doing.
Yeah.
Then in desperation, I cast scan on one of them, and it said it's healed by the earth. So I'm like, all right, cast float on everybody. They can't heal, and when they try to do their most powerful attack, Mad Cow Special, it automatically misses.
I love the Final Fantasy games for stuff like that. I think it's great. Right, that is my final question, I think, then.
But you did mention creatures, and you know we've that was one of the pieces I've just realised that we'd skipped over. So you know, we've talked about float. Are there any other sort of creatures or things that you'd like to highlight?
Because of the fact that the numerous creatures are pre-gens based off of the setup, I don't have a specific one, but I will note that no creature has a set level. If you look at the bestiary, you'll see that big chart about APL, which is average party level.
Yeah.
The idea is if you want to plop a certain creature down at a specific level, the stats for its base are already present. So if you want to take Acheron from FF3 and have him up against a bunch of 5th level party, then he already has his base stats set up completely. So at 5th level, he would have an initiative of 5, HP of 175, MP of 87, attack modifier of 5, physical defense of 15, magical defense of 7, skill defense of 14. And that's all in that chart. If you want to do it at a higher or lower level, it's already there.
So you've got scalable creatures.
Yeah, because I wanted to avoid the fact that you could use any creature at any level.
Yeah,
I really like that.
That's a very sort of computer RPG mechanic, which works really well when you're going into that. So it means you're always very aware of the creatures you're going up against. It may be a creature you met at low levels, but you're now meeting a higher level version of it, and the fight's going to be just as challenging. Yeah,
I wanted to avoid things like making a higher stat variant of an existing monster. Like, for example, when grenades are just a bomb with higher stats. But other than that, they still act like bombs.
Yeah.
So instead of doing that kind of thing, I'll just go, let's just have a bomb, and if you need a higher stat version of it, just use the higher level stat block.
Yeah.
So in that case, I have got the last and final question before we wrap up. And can I just say, Mildra, I have loved listening to this. I love Final Fantasy. I love what you've done. I think you've really brought it alive. So my final question is, what does the future hold for this game? What are your plans? Obviously, hang on, my cat's decided to have a set too. Obviously, if you're looking at running one-shots in the future, you know, our hands will go up, apart from it'll trigger the camera. But absolutely, we would love to be involved, because I think it just sounds fantastic. So what does the future hold for you, Mildra, and your fantastic game?
So for the last few weeks, I've done these conversion streams called Fated Continuum, which is all about taking individual entries in the series and how one might adapt it into our system. I've also done homebrew challenges within my Discord. Like back in September, we did one built around the Sword Timber art prompt that you may have seen on social media.
Yeah.
In addition to that, I do want to write set full-on settings and micro settings that I'm calling shards.
Ooh,
a shard is meant to be a zine-sized setting. Something that you would put in a zine. It's not meant to be all that big as far as a setting. I've seen some call them gazetteers.
Yeah. I like that, because you've just got sort of what you need in a small, compact and bijou sort of leaflet that you can go through. You can pick out what you need. I think that's a really nice approach.
Mm-hmm. And something else I'd like to do is do some form of cross adaptation with other designers within a similar space, as well as certain campaign settings for other games that I feel would fit this kind of thing.
Yeah.
As an example, not too long earlier this month, I did something like this with Tim Gonzalez, the developer of Beacon, talking about adapting his classes into my system. Some were easier than others to do. In the same vein, next month I'm probably going to be doing a similar thing with CJ Lung and Cloudbreaker Alliance. Those are things that I'd like to do. I'd like to explore. Character adaptation, as I've done in the past with things like the Pick 5 challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And I have mentioned the Gaia setting. I want to write a format for a one shot where I could bring people in, where I could bring a rotating amount of people in and out. And the framework that I'm using as a base is loosely inspired by the Fire Cavern exam in Final Fantasy VIII.
Yeah.
Because I already have a setting concept that I've had for a few years called Agito Arcanum, which was Zan and I's take on doing the Hero Academy motif that we see in various anime and video games. Because unlike certain folk within the tabletop space, I do not see a problem with drawing from manga or video games for my tabletop games, which in some circles has made me a bit of a maverick, but I don't care.
Well, we like it. It's good. We've got to have all sorts of role play games in on tabletop. If we all do exactly the same, it's going to be a very boring world indeed.
Yeah. If you want to see what happens when everybody tries to do the same thing, look at the state of sim racing. The basic idea with Agito Arcanum was, so many settings have an adventurer's guild. Why not have a training pipeline? Much in the same way that there's a training pipeline for sports. Like, for example, if someone wants to get into F1, they're probably starting out in karting series. Yep. Then they're moving up to probably endurance races, or in some cases moving over to GT. Then they're moving into some of the mid-range Formula series, like then the junior division, which is nowadays Formula 2. One of the potential mid-ranges that they might move into is things like Formula E, which is just electric Formula 1 vehicles, and then finally moving up to Formula 1. In NASCAR, you have things like short tracks and late models where somebody's going to start out. Then they'll move up to the truck series. Then they'll usually move up to the, I believe back in the day it was called the Bush series. I think it's under a different name nowadays. And then finally you move up to the big leagues. And I figured having an adventuring school that acts as a qualifying body for people who are taking adventuring as a profession would be an idea I wanted to explore. You kind of have that with things like the Gardens in FF8 and Academia in Type 0. So there is precedent on that front.
Yeah.
I really like that. That's a lovely approach. And the minute that Dean pulls out Final Fantasy and starts playing it, I'll let you know, because I just know it's going to happen, because I know him well enough to know he's now itching to get back into it, because everything you've described, Mildra, has really reminded me of Final Fantasy. really brought it alive in a tabletop way as opposed to a computer game, and I think you've captured it really well. You certainly captured the essence of Final Fantasy in your approach. But the last thing I would like to say is just thank you so much for spending all of this time with us today to go through it, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I know Dean has.
Oh, I have.
And yeah, I really look forward to seeing what else comes along and hopefully giving it a go at the point where you've got your one-shots up and running.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's plenty of other stuff that I could have gotten into, but that is going too far into the weeds.
Well, put it like this: we can always do another one. What might be really fun is after you do the one-shots, we've actually given it a go, we might actually do a part 2, because then we might be able to get into some more of the sort of advanced rules that you've been talking about. Where you were talking about how you've got your different bits. I think I was trying to remember the name of it and I didn't write it down. So yeah, I think we do a section 2 after we've had a go. I reckon that would be really good fun, Mildra, if you're up for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could certainly see it.
Yeah, that would be really good. So, it will take as long as it takes for you to get your one-shots. We understand we've got one-shots in the pipeline. We haven't set them up yet. So as soon as ours are up, and it takes as long as it takes you to get these things up and running. Writing a setting, we understand how time-consuming that is. Looking forward to seeing it. And that's the other thing, when your setting's out, we can do a follow-up on your setting, because I'd love to know more about that as well.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for today.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you.
The setting book won't be as pretty as this one, because I'm probably going to be putting that together in like Homebrewery or GM Binder or something like that. But it'll still be my writing.
And that's what matters.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. And with that, we come to the end of yet another Indie Spotlight with Mildra the Monk. And thank you again. And we draw to a close for today. Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed. Thank you.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that, Mildra. I do love the sound